I can assume any form I wish. Any form you wish.
This whole world will be a place of darkness.
Alyssa, it's us. It's us he can't defeat.
Take the fire from my hand.
Question. Nobody reached renewal? Do I get my 4 years back?
Zardos betrayed us. We were hunters, not farmers.
My king, I couldn't do it. Excalibur cannot be lost.
One day, the king will come, and the sword will rise again.
Gone on with it. So anyways, the first film we're going to start with is Kroll. And Kroll is one of my favorite films. And I'll be honest, Kroll was not well received when it came out in 1983. It was not a box office success by any means. And it's been a film that's been shunned by many, especially the mainstream. So naturally, you can guess that those are some indicators that there's probably some hints in this movie. Now, the interesting thing, oh, thanks, Mini Fires. I appreciate that. The interesting thing about Kroll, though, is that there are a lot of old world connections to it. And there's also the fact that there is a novel written by Alan Dean Foster, I think it was Alan Dean Foster, excuse me, that had even more old world connections. Now, we're looking at the opening scene here from Kroll. Now, you see, this is the Black Fortress, and if you're not familiar with the plot of Kroll, it's set on an alien world called Kroll. Now, they never actually call it a planet. They just call it Kroll. So... oh, yeah, back in the day there. So, yeah, and a lot of people didn't watch it then, Quantum Paradox. And I'll be honest, I didn't watch it until it came out on VHS, not beta, VHS. So I'm dating myself. But, well, that's the idea. Anyways, so it didn't do well in the box office, but there's a lot of old world connections, starting with this opening scene. And in the film, they never call it a planet. They always call it a world. And this is the Black Fortress, and the single plot of Kroll is that there's this evil entity called the Beast. He roams around in this Black Fortress, as it's called. It looks like a giant mountain, kind of looks like Shiprock in New Mexico. It bears a striking resemblance to it. So, yeah, exactly. But the interesting thing is, if you look at some of the issues that they had with the original script, they were trying to say that they had to alter the script for a variety of reasons. And at that time, you may or may not know, Kroll was compared and lampooned because it was considered a Star Wars ripoff, because everything else was. Hey, Barrett, good to see you. So every movie, to include Battlestar Galactica, was compared to Star Wars because apparently, George Lucas had the handy greeting on space, as it were. So Kroll is nothing about a space film. The opening scene shows the fortress flying through space, and then it lands on the planet. But there's a lot of how to do about the original script. Hey, Dukes, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. There was a lot of how to do about the original script that they were actually going to show the fortress flying from one great chasm to another, and they had to change it. Now, if you read the Alan Dean Foster novelization, you'll get that hint. And so I always found that interesting. Yeah, exactly. Good one. The Yellow Submarine reference. And that's kind of what they implied. Now, there's also several other little hints that Kroll is not necessarily set in space, but they had to give that hint that, yes, it's kind of a space, a science fiction, fantasy combination. Oh, yeah. And I tend to agree with you, Aluminum Falcon, in several ways. So, but anyways, moving on. So they show the fortress landing on the planet, and it lands in very dramatic fashion, causing a crack. And oh, by the way, spoiler warnings. I'm going to talk the film all the way through and try to stay on topic as fast as I can and as well as I can. Can't promise to do perfect. So this is the Beast. And the Beast has a lot of different abilities and represents just as the name says. Is it supposed to be a bit of a devil representation? Yes. Is it supposed to be the great antagonist representation? Yes. And it's funny when you watch the Siskel and Ebert. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate that. The Siskel and Ebert review of the film, they say, oh, yeah, what's it with the antagonist always losing? Yeah. But the interesting thing about the Beast, and you heard it in the intro, is that he had the ability to assume any form that he wished, that he had all kinds of powers, and that the whole film is based on a prophecy. A prophecy. Yeah, you got it, Rebecca. Not really hiding it, and yet it's in the opening dialogue when he says, don't let my form cause you fear. I can assume any form I wish. Hey, Sky Sage, good to see you. Welcome and thanks for joining us. So, anyways, the whole aspect with the beast, though, is that he has the plan to conquer. Now, they say the galaxy. Oh, yeah, that's always a good one. Although there are many different meanings to the galaxy, and really what they imply is that conquering different worlds. So, that's what the plot's really revolved around, is the beast going around conquering different worlds. Here's a close-up of his eye, and you've probably seen this before. And, you know, not really any hint towards the symbolism here, or the symbology, as they'd say in the movie Boondock Saints. And then this is his army, the Slayers, and they're very unique. They're very alien, and yet they give out this really freakish scream when they get killed. And so, yeah, exactly. With the cat eyes, you're right. And the cat eyes are always present even when the beast assumes a different form. So, well, thank you. I appreciate that, Don Don. So, oh boy. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, exactly. And that's what it boils down to, reptilian shapeshifter. Hey, Sooner West, thanks for joining us. So hope everybody's getting logged in. So this is the army that works for the beast, the Slayers. And the very first plot point of the movie is these two long-term rival kingdoms are going to forge an alliance to fight the invaders. And it's really interesting. They never call them aliens. They just call them invaders. It's kept generic in that way. And these are the two leads. Individual on the left is Prince Colwyn and Princess Lissa on the right. Now, it seems at first like it's the traditional royalty. They get married and then they're going to resist the beast. But there's a lot more of subtext in this movie that oftentimes gets overlooked. And the whole point of the movie, that in the very initiation point of the plot, yeah, exactly. The cat eyes are a major key to this. Yes, that's the symbolism. You're absolutely right. Prince Colwyn, not Colin, Colwyn. But yes, I remember hearing that too when I first saw it. He said, no thanks, I'm already solar powered. Yeah, you're hitting to the plot there. But it all involves the ceremony, and the beast and his army, the Slayers, raid the wedding and break it up, and they kidnap Princess Lissa. And then the rest of the plot involves the beast trying to seduce Princess Lissa to marry him and fulfill the prophecy by marrying him, and then their son will rule the galaxy while Prince Colwyn attempts to rescue her. Now, on the surface, it seems like the classic plot. Yeah, indeed, we'll see. Well, and you know what? That's exactly what it could allude to. And I think they had to change a lot of different things in this movie, so... And, you know, and to be honest, there's a lot of people who try to lampoon this movie. It's really interesting because if you look up modern reviews of it, they even still try to attack it to this day, which I find quite fascinating. It's like, why do they care about a movie that came out in 1983? That's 40 years ago. But you can find plenty of articles that say that this is a terrible movie. And naturally, for some inexplicable reason, J.J. Abrams is supposedly remaking it, even though it did not do well at the box office. So, you know, try to explain that. But along with the other explanations with this movie, you see that the beast not only has the Slayers, he also has the Changelings. And the Changelings are very fascinating because they're another invader creature that can assume any form they wish, and you can always recognize them when they have their completely blacked out eyes. Ah, yes, exactly, Rebecca. And that's how it has to be, Many Fires, and it's always tucked in with fantasy or science fiction or what have you. And there's a very interesting scene where one of the changelings who is supposed to assassinate Prince Colwyn refuses to do so. And yeah, I tend to agree, Daryl. I mean, it has real scenes, real props in it, and they put a lot of effort into it. Yeah, it could be referring to that as well. And it's very, very frightening, some of the scenes in this film. Now, some people said, well, this was a kid's movie. It was rated PG at the time. They didn't have PG-13 yet. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom hadn't come out. Or no, wait, it was Red Dawn that led to the PG-13 rating. So, yeah. And you get all these obvious references in this film. I mean, it's loaded with all these references. And even though people try to say it's an unimaginative film, it's cliche, it's really not. And it's nothing like Star Wars. But you see these changeling characters and the ability that they have, and they very nearly end the plot rather quickly. They also kind of remind me of, I'm thinking of the Dune universe, and of course I'm talking about Frank Herbert's Dune universe, where you have, okay, I'm trying to remember here, what were they called? The Benny Tlilax, Face Dancers, that was it. Yeah, and I always think that the changelings remind me of the Face Dancers from Dune. So I know I'm geeking out a little bit on science fiction here, but I'm just explaining to you what I see in this film. And I think the changelings are another way that you can see creatures that aren't fully human, but try to act and look human. So a little bit of a trick right on there. Indeed. There you go, Kathy. The spice must flow. So anyway, what you see, though, is throughout the plot of the movie, I'll give a lot of credit to the character of Princess Lissa. She is not the traditional damsel in distress that they try to push on us. And in fact, she has one of the strongest moments of moral strength in the film, because while Prince Colwyn, who the Beast has taken the form of here, is trying to rescue Lissa off to the left here, the Beast is trying to tempt her. And one of his greatest temptations that he uses is he tells her, if you consent to be my queen, I'll stop the murdering and death of the slayers inflicted on the land. And he makes it very clear that every hour she delays, more die. Think on it. And in probably one of the greatest moments of moral strength and courage, she resists this. And you can think of many examples where people will take what they think is the greater good, which is what the Beast is offering her, and she refuses. Hey, Songbird College Arts, good to see you. Oh, yeah, and I agree, Alex. It was definitely not a kid's movie. You know, I mean, it was a hard PG at the time, so. Oh, yeah, don't worry, we'll get to the Cyclops. He was a great character, so. Exactly. And, you know, I think that's the whole thing, is that she displays a lot of moral strength, because if she concedes to be his queen, the movie's over, but she does not. She resists, and yet it's a very powerful point that he makes. Now, the other main thing that the film is remembered for is the glaive, which is the weapon Colwyn is wielding here. But what does the glaive actually represent? The glaive represents a means to an end, because Yanar, who's the wise man, played wonderfully by Freddie Jones. Yeah, you're right, Sarah. That's a hard truth right there. None of them are really kids' movies, but remember, we grew up fast in the 80s. Kind of like Transformers, the animated film. It begins with a scene of genocide. But anyway, back to the glaive. The glaive is a means to an end. He has to prove himself worthy of the glaive, but the whole reason to have the glaive is so he can reach Princess Lissa. Thanks, Doc. I appreciate that. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Jerry. He does hint at it many times, so. Yep, Freddie Jones was in Dune, and so was Francesca Annis, who played the Widow of the Web in Kroll, and she's a wonderful performer. I always enjoyed her in any movie she was in. A lot of charisma and just an incredible performer. And yes, if you're going to ask me, I do prefer her version of Lady Jessica. And what I'm about to say is probably controversial, but I do prefer David Lynch's Dune to the new Dune. But that's just my opinion. If you like the new Dune, hey, all the more power to you. So anyway, the glaive is remembered, though, from Kroll because it's, yeah, exactly, where he has to climb a mountain to retrieve the glaive, and it's a very difficult quest where he has to have faith in himself. And I was speaking to a Prime Explorer a couple weeks ago about Kroll, and one of the things they commented to me was how Prince Colwyn, despite the fact that his father was killed, his kingdom's pretty much destroyed, he maintains a pretty optimistic tone throughout the movie, which is definitely not what we see from heroes, especially in the 21st century. I mean, take the modern James Bond. The guy is always depressed about anything and everything. And maybe he has good reason to, so. Well, thank you very much, Tori Hall. I appreciate that, and happy holidays to you. Yeah, I agree. And I wish David Lynch would have gotten to do the film that he wanted to do. It's a real tragedy, you know, and several science fiction writers and honest reviewers went out about that. But so anyway, he retrieves the glaive, and yet he's told he can't use the glaive until he actually has to use it to free Princess Lissa from the prison she's in. You can actually see it, and he has to cut through the wall with the glaive. So, but it's a very intriguing weapon. Now, here you have Yanar, who is the quote-unquote wise man, and this is the old love of his life, whose name is also Lissa, the same as the princess. And there's a very powerful scene where, because he left her to attend to his duties, oh, thanks, Justin, I really appreciate that. There's a very powerful scene where he left her to attend to his duties, and she had a baby, and then murdered it because she was angry with him. And yet, it's a very interesting scene in the movie where he instantly forgives her for doing this. And he's even able to see her how she looks when she's younger here. And she's played by Francesca Annis here. And it's only a short scene, but Francesca Annis always brings in a lot of screen charisma and presence. And seeing her with Freddie Jones, I mean, it's just something you don't see as much with performers. So, well, thanks, Many Fires. Yeah, go ahead and hit that like button. I appreciate that. Go ahead and hit that like button. So, But it's a very powerful scene. He forgives her, and then she's the one who actually helps him to see where the Black Fortress is going to be, because what happens is the Black Fortress moves every day when the twin suns go down, and it goes to a new location. Great defense mechanism. Yep, Spider Witch, and there's a big spider that helps defend the entire web in the compound that she's in. So, oh yeah, thanks about that. I appreciate that, Quantum Paradox. I think I've heard about that. I've actually got a subsequent exploration, a live stream we're going to do on that. So, oh yeah, and he was a marvelous actor. So, nah, she made it pretty clear that she murdered him after he was born. But the whole point being is that it's instant forgiveness, and because of that forgiveness, she quickly enables him to know where the Black Fortress is going to be. And so I think that's really keen there, because what we see in this movie is the concept of working together, of not mistrusting people, and forgiveness. It's all in this film, even though it's considered a cheesy fantasy film. Now, Colwyn recruits a group of mercenaries, if you will. They're robbers. Well, they didn't market it as a child's movie, Celeste, but it was rated PG, and some people saw it as a child's movie. So, but yeah, that's the interesting aspect about it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Antonio. The glaive was a reminder of simpler times. So, oh, there you go. That's right, Liam Neeson, and Robbie Coltrane. This was an early movie for him. Liam Neeson was in this movie. I mean, really, you had a bunch of heavy hitters in terms of performers that were in this movie. I mean, Ken Marshall, unfortunately, his career didn't go anywhere, but he did show up on Deep Space Nine as Lieutenant Commander Eddington, and he played the role very well. So, but you have really everything that's expressed, and at the same time, people are still human beings and act like human beings. And I think it's imperative that what you see in the hero of Colwyn and the Princess Lissa, is that both of them maintain their optimistic outlooks despite so many things working against them. So, well, thanks, Endo. I really appreciate that. And that's all good. Show up whenever. So it's good to see you. But in any event, moving on. He finds out, though, that the glaive is not enough to defeat the beast. And what he finds out is that he actually has to... Oh, yeah, it is. And like I said, it does bear a striking resemblance to Shiprock in New Mexico, which is, I'm sure, just another coincidence. But anyway, we won't go into that. But he's unable to defeat the beast with the glaive, and so he has to complete the ceremony with Lissa, where he says, it's not me you can't defeat, it's us. And so they're able to join their forces, join their power, and suddenly it gives him the ability to shoot flames from his hand. I mean, that's all it is. He shoots flames from his hand, and that's by completing the ceremony. Oh yeah, and it's a very interesting structure that you have out there, that's for sure. But you think about that. You think about, they use magic, but then they also use the trust and love in each other that they have. And yeah, it sounds a little corny, but that's exactly what the plot's around, because there are numerous times where both of them have the chance to undermine each other. And you have to remember, they had only just met at the start of the movie, but they remained faithful to each other. She remained faithful to him, and he remained faithful to her. And I think that's really the key point to the movie. And even in the end, Yanoa remains faithful to the Widow of the Web, the original Lissa, and then ultimately she restores her faith in him. And that's really the point of the movie, and that's a theme that you don't see in movies these days. Not so much. I mean, they're there in some movies. You'll see them, but it seems to be something that, for whatever reason, is suppressed. I can't imagine why. So that's really one of the big points of Krull. And here's the epic scene where he battles with fire. Now, unfortunately, I feel bad. I did not include pictures of Ergo the Magnificent, the Conjurer, or the Cyclops. The Cyclops is a very interesting character because he's supposedly from an alien world, but how does he get to Krull if the Black Fortress is the only way to move between worlds? And if there's rumors that in the original script there was actually teleportation that was going to be involved as well. But they thought that was a little too fantasy, and they wanted to make it a little bit more science fiction because, remember, Star Wars, it's the early 80s, and everything was Star Wars. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much, Robert, and that's what a lot of people saw. You know, it's either Star Wars or it's not. So, and the Cyclops is an intriguing character, and he was played by a resilient British performer, Bernard Bresslaw, and did a really good job with it. So, but that's pretty much it for Krull, and it's definitely a film that I can recommend. Oh yeah. And Ergo adds a lot to the film. You know, he shows the person who maintains a lot of his child innocence, and in fact, he even connects with the kid that they pick up, Titch. And no, it's not an annoying kid, which was another trope that you saw in a lot of 80s films. So, oh yeah. Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right, Jerry. That's a great call out. And he even incorporates that in the story with The Sleeper Must Awaken. So, oh yeah. Oh, what a surprise. What a surprise. All right, so we'll move on to Logan's Run, 1976. Oh, yeah, Spaceballs is a great one. Logan's Run, the 1976 science fiction movie, which depicts a society in a dome where life is utopia until you reach the age of 30, and then you have to report to Carousel. And everyone believes that if they can make it past Carousel, that they will be renewed and start life over again. And that's the premise of the plot. Now, interestingly enough, it's based on a book, which was a lot different. Oh, yeah. So it stars Michael York, Jenny Agutter, Richard Jordan, and our good old favorite Peter Ustinov. Yeah, we won't say so much about Peter Ustinov. He performed well in this movie. Let's just leave it at that. Good one, Quantum Paradox. Yeah, the 80s was when I saw it too, even though it came out in 76. So... And, you know, Logan's Run is a wonderful movie. And it's an interesting open movie. They had some good open science fiction movies, and it did come out a year before the original Star Wars. So make of that what you will. Anyway, here's a scene depicting Carousel. So everybody has a life clock that's imprinted in their hand, and when the life clock starts shining red, and this shows you how they try to impose time upon controlling our lives, which is a recurring theme in films, they report to Carousel. They start spinning, they fly up, and they believe that if they reach the ceiling, they're going to survive. But they have lasers that are blasting them, and naturally nobody ever survives. But of course they think, yes, they're going to survive if they just reach the top. Oh yes, that it was. Anyways, what happens is Logan, who's a policeman, or a Sandman as they call him. Now that's a reference from the book because people were put to sleep, but in the movie they just shoot other people. And Logan's assigned with the mission of finding all these people who are runners. These are people who don't submit to Carousel and try to run and survive. Oh, yeah. And she also had a cameo in Darkman, too. I remember that. Yeah, she's a very, very interesting performer as well. Those great performers from the United Kingdom. Anyways. Oh, yeah, Farrah Fawcett was in the movie, too. Holly 13, I believe. That was her character. Yeah, she was at the new you, the new face that he tries to get. But in any event, Logan is assigned the mission of terminating all these runners who've somehow escaped. Yeah, exactly. Very good point there, Rebecca. Isn't it funny how that 30 magic number keeps coming up? You know, 30-year loan. Anybody with me? Oh, yes. Don't worry, Daryl. We're going to get to Richard Jordan here in a second. So, anyway, the interesting thing about this movie is they're in this domed city, and he breaks out of the dome city to find this place called Sanctuary, but it turns out that it's really the ruined remnants of our civilization, the Fifth Era civilization. And they see what's left of it. Here's one of the scenes where the people reporting to Carousel show their flashing life clock, and that's what they call the crystal implanted in their hand. It's the life clock. Now, Richard Jordan, who's a wonderful actor and played Logan's best friend, Francis. Francis 7, Logan 5, drawing a blank here. Francis 7. Yeah, okay. Just making sure I got the numbers right. And Jess, no, wait, it was, Logan 5, Jessica 6, Francis 7. I think I'm on there. Anybody correct me, okay? The numbers sometimes zap me a little bit. Oh, yeah. Duncan and Dune. That's right. Way before the modern Dune. Although, I got to admit, when Jason Momoa died in the current Dune, I thought, dang, there goes all the character in the film. Okay, sorry. Yeah, good point there, Pete. And isn't it funny how it's right there, isn't it? Well, and maybe that's the real trick behind it, so. But what's interesting about Francis, the character portrayed by Richard Jordan in Logan's Run, is that he sees all the same things that Logan does. So Logan eventually wakes up to the fact that they're living a controlled life, that a computer runs their entire life, and ultimately comes to the conclusion they don't have to die when they reach the age of 30. But Francis can't reach those conclusions. He's just been indoctrinated too long. He can't make that leap of faith to where he's no longer the person who doesn't have to live to be 30. In fact, in the end, when he looks at Logan's life clock and sees that it's empty, yeah, exactly. You're right, Celeste. When he looks at Logan's life clock and sees that it's empty, he honestly thinks Logan renewed. So Francis can't ever jump free of the system, and it's a real tragedy with his character. And in fact, he ends up dying when Logan has to clock him over the head numerous times with a flagpole in self-defense when they fight it out in the U.S. Capitol of all places. What's that there, Robert? Yeah, exactly. And I think it's very direct, though, especially with Francis's character played by Richard Jordan. Hey, Scotty, good to see ya. Hope everything is going well. Yeah, you're right, Sky Sage. It is cognitive dissonance. And that's really what you see from Francis. I mean, he means well. He cares about Logan right up until the end, but he just can't free himself of that system. You know, and earlier in the film, you see their friendship, and the film does a pretty good job. It's very efficient about doing world building and laying out the character relationships very quickly. But as the film goes on, you see that Francis can't understand what's going on, and he doesn't reach those logical conclusions. And ultimately, it leads to his downfall and ultimate death, because if he just would have joined with Logan, he would have found out he didn't have to die at the age of 30. Hey, Radioactive, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So, a lot of tragedy in the film Logan's Run. And I think it's added to the fact that, and oh, here's another interesting thing. So, no one's supposed to be over 30, but Richard Jordan was in his late 30s. So, yeah, I wish I would have looked that good when I was in my late 30s, but oh well. yeah, you definitely can. Yeah, the BioShock games. Good call out there, Jory. I should have played those a little bit more back in the day. Oh, good one, Jamie. Skivvy boys. Okay there, Dr. Maniac Vaughn's Truth. Yeah, maybe. Oh, yes. And, you know, it's funny you bring up the ice robot, Daryl, because they still try to revolve controversy around the gentleman who voiced the ice robot. So, but they were trying to do that a lot of times with certain characters who did that. And because it happened twice, you know, they always say, oh, there's a lot of controversy with it, which wasn't the case. So, anyway. So here's some of the imagery. You can actually see they did a good job with the matte paintings, and I kind of miss those special effects. So, oh, Logan's Run, you haven't seen it? Yeah, it's a good one. Don't get me started on Ice Pirates, okay? We might have to do that a subsequent time, but yeah, it's another favorite movie of mine. Robert Urich, quite a comedy. Good to see you, Jason. Thanks for joining us. But then, of course, what's funny is they see the Lincoln Memorial, Logan and Jessica do, and they go up on it and they see the statue of Lincoln and they say, that must be what it's like to be old. Well, what are the odds on that there? Hopefully it was a good theater. I noticed that theaters seemed to be a little different back then. Yeah, it might be there, Bug Garden. It might be. Oh, yeah. Well, that's John Carpenter again. Yeah, we've covered his films. I've done a lot of looks at John Carpenter films. They're wonderful. So, oh yeah, Jamie, it's a crazy film, but it's a lot of fun. You know, that old saying, it's legitimately a fun film. All right, so now we move on to Zardoz. Zardoz, our 1970s film from British director John Boorman. Now, this film was done after John Boorman had success with Deliverance, and this was basically the studio rewarding John Boorman for his great work, and they basically gave him, I think it was $1 million, and said, go make whatever movie you want to. Yeah, that's right. Write it about whatever you want. Now, Zardoz is very interesting. Yeah, that's probably why, Sarah. No doubt about it. Well, you know, it's funny breaking free from narcissism. The ideas in Zardoz, while it might seem like a silly, incomprehensible film, there are some very frightening ideas. You know what? And you're absolutely right. Zardoz is a tough watch. So I'll just warn anybody on that. If you think you're going to jump into Zardoz, it is not an easy film to watch. Yeah, isn't it interesting, Daryl? I actually got 2 John Boorman movies here in these 5. So yeah, we'll get to Excalibur. Don't worry. But the whole premise of Zardoz is it's set in the post-apocalyptic world. There's a group of people called the Eternals. They live in the vortex, and they're the scientists in their ilk. And then everybody else who lives outside the vortex, yeah, exactly, they're called the Brutals, and they live in squalor, and then they serve the Eternals. Until one time, a quick-witted Brutal, played by Sean Connery, of course, named Zed, he gains some knowledge and power by manipulation, as it's made clear, and decides to infiltrate the vortex to bring down the Eternals' reign of power. Now, this is a real powerful scene here because, oh, thanks, Rebecca. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what, Jerry? I'm going to cover Time Bandits in a subsequent live stream because that is an incredible movie. Can never get enough David Warner. Yes, actually, they do say that, Daryl, right before this scene where the giant head spews out weapons and ammunition because the Brutals are supposed to maintain population control. So, oh, yeah. Yeah, John Carter. That's a good one, too. So, well, thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate that. So anyway, it's basically a take on Wizard of Oz. And in fact, that's the solution to the plot, is that Wizard of Oz is the book that the Eternal named Arthur Frayne is using to manipulate everybody. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Rebecca. And it's good to see other people getting on board and able to enjoy the special content. So, but, oh, Ed Metropolis had slipped in there. Sorry about that. We'll come back to Metropolis in time. This is Arthur Frayne, and he's the individual who manipulates everything. He's basically the Wizard of Oz in the story of Zardoz, and that's really what it's a play on. Yeah, I think John Carter got a raw deal, and it's sad that Disney gave up on that because that was a good film. It was actually a really good film, but that's what we got right now. So, yep, and that's exactly what this film shows. So Arthur Frayne. Anyway, when Zed infiltrates Vortex, they quickly torture him psychologically and discover what he's all about. And the entire premise of the film, and it's really weird. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. I mean, yeah, L. Frank Baum did write 16 Oz books, and he also did The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, which oddly enough includes a lot of references to that place we like to talk about, Tartaria. Don't say it. I just said it. What are you going to do about it? So, anyway, the film is somewhat incomprehensible. There is this plot point, though, where the Eternals have been left in a state of catatonia. And here you have Sean Connery tossing them aside. And this is symbolic for a variety of reasons, because it shows that these people have no life. They've willingly given up their life. They have no motivation, no presence. And it's one of the key themes of the movie. And so I know this seems a little comical, but this is just how people regard these people who have no life. They have legitimately given up their lives, and this is how Sean Connery feels about them. I know it seems a little comical, but it's very symbolic in the film for a reason. And so as the film goes on, what Sean Connery figures out is that the Eternals, who are pictured here off to the right, and he's looking into the artificial intelligence, which just happens to be called, anybody know what it's called? The Tabernacle. That's the artificial intelligence. Oh, yeah. That's the artificial intelligence that's really controlling the vortex. But the movie doesn't tell you who's really behind everything. It alludes to it, but it doesn't spell it out for you. And so what they find out is they have to break free from the control of the tabernacle. Some of the Eternals want to start a new life, such as May here. She's a philosopher, and she's able to accept a different way of being and moves on to a new life. But other Eternals, such as Friend here, they just want to die because they're so tired of being alive. That's what it all comes down to. So yeah, it's a bit of a dystopian film at the same time. And the whole film details... Yeah, well, that's what happens when you give John Borman all the money and creative control. He's going to do exactly what he wants, and boy, did he ever. So, and yeah, thank you again for that. So, and we talk about what is an NPC. Is it somebody to be mocked? Is it just because there's some people, they're like Francis, they're good people at heart, but they just can't make that leap? I'm not really sure. I don't know. And I'm not going to come to that answer tonight, but it is very clearly depicted in numerous films. Whether it's somebody who has deep character like Francis did, or these catatonics that are depicted in Zardoz. So it's hard to say. But the whole premise of the movie is that Sean Connery finds a way to break the control of the AI. Yeah. He finds a way to break control of the AI, and eventually they lead a revolt. Hey, Heidi, good to see you. Well, and, there's other kinds of movies. They've kind of been changed a little bit, movies that don't have deeper context. And, we can dance around it, but a lot of movies with deeper context have been removed. Well, we just have our action scene and run to the next one, please. So NPC is non-player character. It's a term that came up, about 3 years ago when something was happening in 2020. I don't know what. And it really referred to anybody who didn't seem to have their own personality, or really the best way to say it is have self-agency. Now, there's been a lot of studies on it, and there's been other alternative researchers. Hey, Dwayne, I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's another way to say it. They're breaking free from narcissism. Yep. It's really people who don't have depth and they just go to one reaction to the next. They need to be told what to think and what to do. Or they're people that the Gnostics used to call people who were only materialists. So, yeah, there you go. That's a good way to put it, Sky Sage. Well, no, not exactly. So, it's all good. But the thing about Zardoz is when it ends, you know, the way it ends is the vortex is destroyed. Most of the Eternals are killed. Some of them are able to make a leap to a new life. And I have reviewed the movie, and you can certainly watch it. Well, thank you, Sadie. I appreciate that. I have made the review of Zardoz, and I can recommend the review, but I give you a warning in the review that be careful watching the movie, especially on your own, because in simple terms, it is a very trippy movie, and it is not an easy movie to watch. You know, I'd say Kroll is easy to watch. It might seem a little corny in places, but it's easy to watch. Hey, PJCC West, good to see you. And Logan's Run is a pretty easy watch. You know, and technically, which of those three is the best movie? Well, Kroll is Lucius Aurelian's favorite movie, along with Excalibur. But any one of these movies I can watch on any given night. But that's just me, you know? That's just me. Okay, so let's go to Metropolis. Oh, yeah, exactly. So Metropolis, what have we got here? Yeah, it was, you know, Harry Potter's a good example, especially the original books. So, oh yeah, and Excalibur is the last movie we're covering, but we'll go to Metropolis. So 1927 German science fiction movie, considered one of the original science fiction movies that depicts a dystopian society where you have a group of people who run a city, managers, and then you have workers, and that old divide. Yeah, that's what some people would say. But anyway, they depict Moloch here, and Moloch is supposed to represent the heart machine in the movie. And Metropolis is really just that. It's a very advanced futuristic city that's kept alive by people working very hard and people exploiting those workers. Now you have the people who run the city, and they live in opulence. And you see a lot of old world architecture that's somehow depicted when it was very difficult to do so. Remember, these were all practical effects and actual sets. So, oh yeah, exactly. And maybe that's what they were depicting to an extent. Yep. And I think a lot of people, well, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate that. I think a lot of people see this film a little differently now. You know, a lot of people see it as the original science fiction film, but there's a lot more to it. Oh, yeah. And in fact, they even reference the Tower of Babel. In fact, the Tower of Babel is the leader of the city's headquarters. In fact, here it is referenced in this scene. So you have a lot of different aspects in the scene, some very unique depictions. This is Maria. And what's really intriguing, and I'll zoom in on this for you here, is some of the work they do with the eyes. Yeah, absolutely right. Both of you, yeah, good comments there, Sky Sage and Rebecca. Controlled society, no free thoughts allowed, and there is a lot of Art Deco. And in fact, it's kind of the motivation for Art Deco. So there you go, many fires. Yep, it all overlaps. Well, you can watch Metropolis for free. I believe it's still up on YouTube. So, but yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they achieve this scene with these eyes, but it's a very disturbing scene where it shows you a lot of the conflicted personalities of the people in this movie. Some people even go so far as to suggest that this film really is from a different civilization. Now, I don't know about that, but in any event. But it also shows one of the first androids or bots, if you will, in a film. And it was obviously the motivation for Star Wars. So, oh yeah, Rachel in Blade Runner. Yeah, not covering Blade Runner this time, but we'll definitely talk about it in a subsequent live stream. So, oh yeah, steampunk Photoshop. But what's interesting is the conflict between the. Oh, that's another good way. That's another good way to say it there, Chris Johnson. No inner dialogue. No bicameral mind, as they said in that show Westworld before it strangely changed between the first and the second season. So, but back to Metropolis, you know, it shows you droids. It shows this conflict between the managers of the city and the people who run the city. They even have Maria, whose essence is transformed to this robot, and then this robot is actually a fake Maria who begins many revolts and violence throughout the city. So a lot of different interesting ideas. Here's a depiction of Fredder's headquarters, the Tower of Babel. And here's where you see the Art Deco that Rebecca mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, Photoshop of horrors. That's absolutely right. And then here's the character of Maria. And again, I'll zoom in on the eyes for you because it's really intriguing how they did these shots with the eyes. And keep in mind, this is the 1920s. Very odd facial expressions. So a lot of interesting things in this movie. And I certainly recommend it just for understanding the historical aspect of cinema, or at least as we understand it. So yes, Head Honcho Rocks, I'm familiar with that because there's actually a mountain there called the Tower of Babel, and they say it's where a rock struck, and that's why it's so circular. Oh yeah, a lot of unique things in this film. And then it all culminates at this, what is supposed to be a set piece, but it looks like a giant cathedral where the workers and the managers finally meet, and then the son of the head manager, he finally acts as the heart who unifies the workers and the management. That's really the plot in a nutshell. But there's a lot more going on in the film. And when you watch it, it's certainly a lot of meaning for you to derive because, there's no dialogue. It's only shown in cards, and a lot of it's through imagery and through facial expressions. And it's really impressive how much of a story they convey. Doesn't it though? Doesn't it? It just needs to have that white painting on it. Oh yeah, it's probably on the inside. So anyway. Well, yeah, you always got to have giant doors. How are you going to know it's a cathedral without giant doors? Hey, Isabella, good to see you. Welcome. Yeah, exactly. English Socialist Party, 1984. Oh, yeah. This is an idealized image of it. This isn't actually from the film, but this is a unique artwork that's associated with the film that gives you an idea of the futuristic aspect. Yeah, who knows? We might be. We just might be and not know it. Oh, yeah, Newspeak, Double Talk, Double Think, it's all in there. All right. And then one of the most important points is the concept of time in the film Metropolis. So up top, the management or the rulers of the city run on a normal 24-hour clock. There are 2 shifts that work underground, and they operate on a 10-hour clock. But what they don't realize is that 10 hours is actually 12 hours. And so it shows how people are letting time control their lives. In fact, do we allow time to control our lives? And that's really what this film causes you to question, because some people have suggested, was there a world where there was a 10-hour clock? Well, actually, the question you should be asking is there a world where there can be any kind of clock? And any sort of clock can designate any sort of time at any point in time. Oh, yeah, exactly. And so when it hit 10 hours, the workers thought they were getting a good deal. Oh, I'm only working a 10-hour shift. In reality, they were working a 12-hour shift, and there were only 2 shifts. Oh, yeah, I'll have to check that out. So, yeah, that could be. That could be. And Matt's got some wonderful theories, and I've certainly watched Quantum of Conscience, so. Yeah, exactly. Ding, 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 and you're all onto it. And that's what this film very clearly shows, is that time is an artificial control feature that's imposed on people. Maybe. We just don't know. But there's always the whole concept of time and why we always talk about things. All right, so that's enough of Metropolis. I want to save the most time for what is my favorite film with Kroll. And you're going to say, oh, really? And how can you have 2 favorite films? Well, believe me, when you watch Excalibur, please do a video on what? Yeah, just let me know. On time? Sure. Got one coming up. Oh, yeah. Excalibur. Yep. 1981 by John Borman, the same director as Zardoz, and yet Excalibur is a completely different film. And in fact, you could think about Excalibur representing the last remnant of the previous civilization, and I do think it goes that far. And Excalibur blew me away when it came out as well, because I think this has and always will be the best movie on the King Arthur legend, and it depicts everything very wonderfully. And here you have good old Liam Neeson, who was in Kroll, along with the unbelievably wonderful performer Helen Mirren. And this is an early film for her. And she is incredible in this movie. She plays Morgana, King Arthur's half-sister. She's the antagonist of the movie, but yet she's also a sympathetic antagonist. So there's a lot of aspects to this movie, and a lot of different elements to it. And it follows the Arthurian legend very well. You start off with King Uther, played by a very young Gabriel Byrne, and he does a pretty good job, although there was a joke about how he was saying one night with Igraine. And for me, this was really my introduction to the Arthurian legend. Exactly. The land and the king are one. And that's one of the central aspects to it. It's one of the central themes of the movie, and it's what the king actually forgets, and he has to be brought out. Ah, yes. Could be true, Doc Ride. It could be true, and maybe we are. So here is the wedding ceremony is a very beautiful scene, and they shot this film in Ireland, and so you might have noticed that I do have a bit of a connection with Ireland. So, yeah, that's part of it. That's what's depicted in the film. I mean, this film does not shy away from depicting darkness and deceit and all the worst aspects of humanity, while at the same time depicting the best aspects of humanity. Well, this was filmed in 1980, and it came out in 1981. Yeah, they did a great combination of some of the original old marches from Wagner, and then they had some Carl Orff in it. Carl Orff's theme actually is the King Arthur theme. It's a wonderful film. I highly recommend it, just as a film alone. And then visually, it's very beautiful. But you see how the land and the civilization progresses from these very rough-looking knights when the film starts, and as the movie progresses, you gradually see civilization start to form, and then it falls apart again. So here you have Helen Mirren as Morgana with Nicole Williamson, a wonderful British actor, as Merlin. Now, a lot of people remember Sam Neill as Merlin, and I had a saying, Sam Neill did a wonderful job of portraying Merlin. But Nicole Williamson was Merlin. Oh, yeah. Well, not to give you a cliche answer, Head Honcho Rocks, but that is a story for another day. So, yeah, there's a little bit different then. So, yep, many, many faces. You're right. Yeah, and I haven't forgotten it at all. Has Charlie Borman, and it also has Robert Addy. We'll get to him in a little bit. But there's this powerful scene where Arthur has just drawn the sword from the stone, and he has to fight some of the other knights, and he has one of the significant battle lords, Sir Uriens, and he has to trust Sir Uriens to knight him because Arthur hasn't been knighted yet. It's a very powerful scene of faith and understanding and forgiveness in the movie, and it's really where you start to see the civilization take off in this film because he has to spare Uriens to do it. You also have Nicole Williamson as Merlin, and I love how they depict the Standing Stones, and we had a special exploration on that. So, oh yeah. Well, there is hope for all of us, and that's why we have to keep moving. Oh, okay, New World Over. Yeah, don't worry, it's on the list, so. Come on, Rebecca. If I tell you that, that's going to answer way too many questions, so. Well, I'll give you a hint. Saw it in the theater, and did not see it in the United Kingdom. So, yeah, that's right. Another Dune connection there. Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart played Sir Leondegrance, who was Guinevere's father. Yeah, I know you're very crafty, and I respect that. So, anyways, back to Excalibur. Here's the powerful scene where Sir Uriens, he's given the sword by Arthur, and he could simply kill him, but he doesn't. He actually knights him because he's touched by Arthur's display of faith and confidence in him to respect him as a warrior. And so you get that whole concept. Oh, don't worry, it's coming. You get that whole concept of what people were like in an older civilization. I think it's honestly depicted in this film, how there was a code of honor. Now, Sir Uriens, despite being Arthur's greatest antagonist, he's actually the one who's willing to die for him. Here you have Morgana. Now, Morgana is a very conflicted character because she does have a righteous cause in the fact that Arthur's father did murder her father. And so she has a bit of a revenge streak for that. But she's written in a much more complicated way, in the way Helen Mirren portrays her. It's really wonderful. This is her son from incest with Arthur, because Arthur was her half brother, and this is Mordred, who's played by Robert Addy. For those of you who don't know, I'm a big fan of Robin of Sherwood, and Robert Addy plays Guy of Gisborne. Yeah, that's right, gold armor, which the only weapon that can penetrate it is Excalibur. And here's that knighting scene again, and this is one of my favorite scenes, and I think the fact that he actually does that, it really shows the trust and faith and confidence. Yep, that's exactly right. He draws the sword twice, but doesn't become king until he shows faith in others, which I think is a really powerful moment in the movie, and that's why the scene is so powerful. Exactly. The actual concept of a code of honor, not just something that's fancy or for show, but people who really have honor and respect in others. Something that we're constantly taking away from each other. Hey, Jacob Law, good to see ya. I don't wonder if it was Hendo, especially the Robin of Sherwood version of it, because there's lots of clues on that. So that might be a subsequent exploration if somebody requests it. So we also have one of the best scenes of the quest for the Grail, which really Percival becomes the main character. What's interesting about this movie is it's divided up into 3 acts, like really good movies are. And you have this, yeah, I agree, Scotty. You have a main character in each section of the movie. In the first section of the movie, it's Uther Pendragon. In the middle section of the movie, it's Arthur. And then in the last section of the movie, Percival becomes the main character. And then reverting back to Arthur, although Percival is the one who finishes out the movie. It's all very intriguing. Exactly, Doc Rod. I completely agree with you. And I think that's why it's important that we remember that no matter what. But the Grail quest by Percival is quite an intriguing portion of the movie, and really the entire tone of the film shifts because it goes from depicting this near utopia that they have with Camelot and the way the land is balanced and people are living in full respect of each other. All the subjects have everything that they want and need. And Arthur even suggests that they've defeated evil, but they haven't. And that's when, because of the issue with Guinevere, because Arthur has to be someone who's more than a man. He has to be the stuff of future legends. He can't be the perfect husband for her, or he can't be a good husband for her, and even admits it. And so she makes the mistake of having an affair with Lancelot. And Lancelot and Guinevere aren't evil characters. They're not evil human beings. They make mistakes, as human beings legitimately do. And that's what this film depicts. The quest for the Grail is being able to forgive people for their mistakes. Oh, yeah, that Kevin Costner guy. Yeah, I was wondering when you were going to bring him up. But I always found the Grail quest in Excalibur to be one of the best depictions of it. And even the end scene. Yeah, exactly. Because oftentimes they don't want us to forgive. Yeah, you're exactly right, Many Fires. And he admits that to Guinevere and comes very clean and forgives her. You know, another scene of good forgiveness and understanding I made mistakes, you made mistakes. But that's what it all boils down to. Yeah, true. True. Yep, the boat taking him off to Avalon. Good to see you, Katie. Welcome. But some other notes from this film. So Percival is really the stalwart knight who helps Arthur all the way through the end in the final battle against Mordred and his army. Now, I'd like to give a shout out to Nicholas Clay as Lancelot. There have been a lot of depictions as Lancelot, and for whatever reason, oh yeah. And the Green Knight's a great story, Sky Sage, and it's great Arthurian myth as well. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, it is, Daryl, because I think it shows the opposite inverse of the Grail story. Just a bunch of people who are clowning around, not really sure what they're doing, and just bumbling into one misadventure after another. Because, yeah, that's what the quest for the Grail can be. It can be very serious, and it can be a massacre, and it can be a comedy all at the same time. Absolutely right, Robert. And the reason I like Nicholas Clay's depiction of Lancelot is he manages to come across as being the perfect knight in tactical capability, but he has human flaws. And even in the end, when he says, "It's the old wound, my king, it never healed," and ultimately that's what kills him. Yeah, so my favorite version, since y'all are talking about the Green Knight, is the 1990s version that came directly from British television. And it was not a main release movie. I'll have to post it on my channel. I'll put it up on Reddit because I strongly recommend it. So, oh yeah, John Cleese. So, it may be an ideal. In this film, in Excalibur, it's depicted as that which gives us a fresh start and enables us to begin our lives anew and actually conduct the proper quest, because it's not until Arthur is healed by the Grail that he's able to continue to be the king. And really what it's about is remembering that the land and the people are one. Specifically, the king and the land are one. And so that's what it all boils down to. Now, a little depiction here. This was a screen production of the film. The women who were depicted in the movie Excalibur. So you have Guinevere on the left, you have Morgana in the middle, and you have Igraine on the right. You see some very interesting characteristics, and they all have very well developed characters. And even though Igraine's not in the film very long, portrayed by Katrine Borman, John Borman's daughter, they called it the Borman Family Project because he had a lot of his family involved in the film. You kind of see the different dimensions to their characters and how people respond different ways. And I always thought that the depth that these characters had made them very interesting. They were all strong in their own way, and they all had their very unique personalities. And each of them made different mistakes, and yet at the same time, I like the depth that they have. And oftentimes it's something that we just don't see in movies to this day. And so I appreciate that in the movie Excalibur and what they all brought to this film. I also like the depiction in the sets. I think this is probably one of the best depictions that we've ever seen of the Round Table. Whenever I think of the Round Table, Excalibur, Camelot, I see this. The interior depiction. So, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. All good references. Absolutely. Yeah, I wonder what happened with the set, because this was an incredible set and it really transported you there. And Nicole Williamson, his portrayal of Merlin, I think you could be onto something there, Rebecca. And certainly Nicole Williamson's little device that he used here that always lit up whenever he was chanting an incantation or a spell. Yeah, pass the salt. So, but the interesting thing is Nicole Williamson and Helen Mirren had a bit of a falling out before the film, and they actually made it as part of their characters. And they did a really good job, because you saw this little bit of contest going on between the two of them. And so I thought it was really depicted well in the film. So, yep, that was the dragon, the referred to dragon in the film. Now, granted, that was just a set photo, but, you know, and I certainly agree. He was the best Merlin. And it's interesting because Nicole Williamson actually played Little John in the Robin Hood movie with Sean Connery when he played Robin Hood. Exactly. And you see it reflected relentlessly. Oh, yeah. It's always a wonderful film to rewatch. One of the most powerful scenes in the entire movie, though, is, and I play it at the start of many of the videos, is after Arthur is renewed by the Holy Grail, and he says, "Ready my knights for battle, they'll ride with their king once more." And then you see them ride out, and the land is renewed as they're riding through, and they're playing Karl Orff. It's a wonderful scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in a movie ever. And they're going out to face Mordred's army, who vastly outnumbers them. He only has about 20 knights left. And John Borman obviously did not have the budget to shoot a large-scale battle, but he managed to make it look like a large-scale battle. Yeah, in a manner of speaking, he was flawed, Katie. He was supposed to be flawed, because he had to earn his true path to ascend to Avalon. That's what the story's about. Because oftentimes we try to depict people as being perfect in films today, but nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. That's one of the reasons that I think that we go through our trials and tribulations. The battle finally ends, and he slays Mordred, played by Robert Addy, by running him through with Excalibur. And that is how the movie ends. Hey, thank you, my bailiwick zone. I appreciate that. Yep, made him ride faster, and then they had the final battle with the fog, and yet the fog was also a major plot point where Merlin went and tricked Morgana into releasing the fog after Morgana tricked Merlin into imprisoning himself. So, yep, it is a very spiritual film. Ah, absolutely, PJCC West. When we embrace our own nature and we believe in ourselves. Absolutely. Yeah, silver and gold. Very good point. So, a lot of symbolism in this movie, and it reflects everything that comes down to Excalibur. So, let's go back and recap some of the themes that we've seen through all these 5 films. You know what? Since you're bringing it up, one of my favorite scenes also is compare and contrast how Uther and Arthur related with Merlin. Uther really couldn't stand Merlin and kind of ordered him around and didn't really care about him. When Merlin says this world's done with me and he's leaving, Arthur is very, very sad and gives him a hug. It's a really touching scene. Ah, yes, Sky Sage, absolutely. You know, if you come to it, yeah, it's very obviously depicted. So we all have things we can work on, Kevin. We all have things we can work on. There's no doubt about it. Oh, yeah. Well, hey, thanks, Sooner West. I appreciate that. And everybody be sure to hit that like button. Thank you very much. And you know what? It's amazing how fast this year has been going by. And I'm a little shocked at how quickly it went by. And it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that I was doing these film reviews, much to the chagrin of many people who were telling me this has nothing to do with the old world or Tartaria. Really? Excalibur has nothing to do with it? Oh, yeah. Wonderful people here, you know, and that's what I love about the channel is all of you are wonderful people. You all have wonderful ideas, and I appreciate every one of them. So he does and he doesn't. It's very interesting. And what's really crazy is that John Borman's career kind of petered out after this. This is really the last big film he did. I mean, he had other films, The Emerald Forest, which also had Charlie Borman in it. That was intriguing. Another early film for Powers Booth, but yeah, we'll see. We shall see. But some other connections, the faceless evil that you see, because what's interesting about these movies, you know, we have AI, we have a computer, we have a beast, we have darker forces, because what's interesting about Excalibur is it alludes to the darker forces, but if you ever read the novel, Morgana is not the ultimate evil in the movie. She simply becomes a tool of it. So it's all very, very intriguing. Yeah, The Emerald Forest is a good movie. Don't let me talk it down or anything like that. It just seemed like John Borman's career just didn't continue as people or certain directors who tell the truth, like John Carpenter. So yeah, and that may be what it reflects in, and that's what you see in these films, and that's why I picked these films to review and cover for this. So. But in any event, probably the reason why Krull is my favorite film, maybe because Krull transports me to a different time and different place. And I often imagine that movie as being set in a different land, but a land that we can somehow access. Now, you know, maybe I'm out of my mind or whatever, and that's fine if you want to think that. You know, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But it's one of those movies that really transports me to a different place. But when it comes to the movie that does the best job from start to finish of really depicting all allusions to the old world and what that civilization may have been like, especially in a society, I think Excalibur covers it the best. You have what things look like after a reset in Logan's Run. You have what could be a depiction of an old world or a time between resets with Metropolis. And you have all these wonderful ideas in all these different films that come out and are shown in many subconscious ways, which for some inexplicable reason we're not supposed to talk about. And I'm really not sure why. But what exactly, which of the 5 films, for those of you who've seen them, are your favorite? Let me know right now. I'm curious. Ah, good one, Rebecca. That's right. And that's what we must always strive to. Courage, integrity, and evolution within the self. Not a physical evolution, a spiritual evolution. Internal. Ah. Good one, good one. Oh, Metropolis. Okay. Yeah, Excalibur. You know, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just interested to hear, you know, which one's your favorite. Oh, yeah. John Borman fan. Ooh, The Dark Crystal. Yeah, I'll have to cover that one. The movie, not the Netflix TV series. Although the Netflix TV series had a lot of potential. They just decided to stop it, you know, for reasons. Oh, yeah, they've got some really good ones. And to be honest with all of you, you know, I could watch any one of these films on any day and be really, really happy at any point in time. Well, thanks. I appreciate that, Awakening Soldier. Thank you very much. You know, and it's also interesting because a lot of these films were shown a lot on TBS, TNT back in the day. You don't really see them much anymore. I can't imagine why. That's, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, KC933. That's a very interesting film as well. And that was definitely a film that got overlooked a lot when it came out in the 90s. I remember that. Oh, yeah. Well, don't worry. If there's enough demand, we'll definitely do another old world and film connection. I think it works a lot better. Hey, Tara, good to see you. I think it works a lot better as a live stream because I appreciate the connection on it. Okie dokie. Since you brought this up, I have to ask, are you talking about the 1970s TV series or are you talking about the reimagined TV series? Now, I'm just going to say there's a lot of ammunition in both of them, so. Oh, goodness. Highlander? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll probably open up something in the public poll and see what you think, and I'll do one for the members as well. Oh, yeah, Space 1999. All right. Well, maybe we'll have to come back and maybe make this a monthly exploration. Would you like that? Oh, gosh, Deer Hunter. Yeah, that's a really tough film to watch. It's a great film, and it's amazing what happened to Michael Cimino's career after that film, too, with Heaven's Gate. You know, and then people tried to say that when Kevin was making Dances with Wolves that it was going to be Kevin's Gate. But hey, the film came out and Kevin showed everybody, right? Oh, yeah. I'm going to be honest. The original Battlestar Galactica is one of my favorites. I did enjoy the reimagined series, but for different reasons. Oh, yeah. Lord of the Rings. Always a good one, too. Ooh, the Black Hole. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, yeah, the original Terminator. So we've got infinite options on this one. So I'll open up the poll. We'll do some nominations. You know, I think 5 films is good because, you know, here we're keeping our usual live stream, you know, and I really appreciate y'all being here. Time is valuable. You know, time, get it? Sorry, I had to go there. But, you know, just being here and sharing what we share, it's all important. So, yeah. I'll be looking at that. That's all on the list. Okay. Yep. You got it. All right. So we'll open it up. We'll do a little bit of a poll and see what your recommendations are, and then we'll pick 5. But I think we'll go with 5 and do this once a month going ahead, unless there is demand not to, and we can go to more traditional explorations. But oh yeah, that was a good one too. So, anyways. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this exploration. Okay, yep, Inception. And you are certainly welcome to converse with me directly if you're keen to know what some more of my perceptions are on certain films. I'm happy to answer, so. Because he was so popular on Saturday Night Live, remember? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one to do. But anyway, I appreciate everyone being here, and I appreciate all the comments and all the support. And this has been a wonderful and great live stream, and I think it definitely warrants another go at it. So we'll make another go at it in January here in the new year. I hope you all had a great year, although, yeah, it's time. But, you know, I appreciate all the places that we've been, and we'll continue to go forward. And thank you for all of your support and all the help and all the contributions. Well, thank you, Celeste. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. So you all enjoy your evening, and I hope the year ends well. That's okay, Tara. That's why it's there for everybody. And I think that's all we have for tonight. So I'll look to get that poll out this week and get your nominations for the next films. I think we got a pretty good list to start with, but I'll just open it up and we'll go from there. So in any event, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful end of year. Thank you. And have a good night or day or wherever you are. Welcome to the Restitutor Orbis channel. Thank you for joining me today.
There is no sanctuary.
Unacceptable.
You mean nobody's ever been renewed?
The question has been answered.
Question. Do I get my 4 years back?
Today we'll be looking at Logan's Run in our Old World in Tartaria in the Movies Review. So let's jump right into this, looking at the mainstream account of Logan's Run. I first saw Logan's Run when I was about 7 years old. I may have seen it in the theaters when I was 7 years old. I may have watched it on VHS. I may have seen it on DVD. It's not really important. I saw it when I was young. Logan's Run is a 1976 American science fiction action film, interesting classification, directed by Michael Anderson and starring Michael York, Jenny Agutter, Richard Jordan, Roscoe Lee Brown, Farrah Fawcett, and Peter Ustinov. Oh, yeah, we've got a few things to say about Peter later. The screenplay was by David Zelig Goodman, is based on the 1967 novel Logan's Run by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. And there are a lot of differences between the movie and the novel, including the age which Last Day happens at. It depicts a utopian/dystopian future society on the surface revealed as a dystopia where the population and the consumption of resources are maintained in equilibrium by killing everyone who reaches the age of 30. The story follows the actions of Logan 5, a Sandman who has terminated others who have attempted to escape death and is now faced with termination himself. Produced by Metro-Goldwyn Mayer, the film uses only the novel's two basic premises, that everyone must die at a set age, and that Logan and his companion Jessica attempt to escape while being chased by another Sandman named Francis, who is also Logan's best friend. After aborted attempts to adapt the novel, story changes were made, including raising the age of Last Day from 21 to 30 and introducing the idea of carousel for eliminating 30-year-olds. Its filming was marked by special effects challenges in depicting carousel and innovative use of holograms and wide-angle lenses. And visually, this is a very unique movie to this day. The film won a Special Academy Award for its visual effects and 6 Saturn Awards, including Best Science Fiction Film. A spin-off TV series aired in 1977 to 1978 on CBS for 14 episodes. And the less I say about that, probably the better. Plot. In the year of the city 2274, the remnants of human civilization live in a sealed city contained beneath a cluster of geodesic domes, a utopia run by a computer that takes care of all aspects of life, including reproduction. Sound familiar? The citizens live a hedonistic lifestyle, but to prevent overpopulation, everyone must undergo the rite of carousel when they reach the age of 30. There, they are killed under the guise of being renewed. To track this, each person is implanted at birth with a life clock crystal in the palm of the left hand that changes color as they get older and begins blinking as they approach their last day. Most residents accept this chance for rebirth, but those who do not and attempt to flee the city are known as runners. An elite team of policemen known as Sandmen, outfitted in predominantly black uniforms with a little gray stripe across the chest, are assigned to pursue and terminate runners as they try to escape. Logan 5 and Francis 7 are both Sandmen. After terminating a runner to whose presence they were alerted during a carousel rite, Logan finds an Ankh among his possessions. Later that evening, he meets Jessica 6, a young woman also wearing an Ankh pendant. Logan takes the Ankh to the computer, which tells him that it is a symbol for a secret group whose members help the runners find Sanctuary, a mythic place where they will be safe to live out the rest of their lives. Logan learns that the Sandmen have lost 1,056 runners this way. The computer instructs Logan to find Sanctuary and destroy it, a mission which it codenames Procedure 033-03. That's true, it's not made up. Which he must keep secret from the other Sandmen. Then the computer changes the color of his life clock to flashing red, suddenly making him 4 years closer to carousel. Scared, he asks if the 4 years will be restored to him when his mission is completed, but receives no response. In order to escape this, Logan is now forced to become a runner. Logan meets Jessica and explains his intention to run. They meet with the underground group that leads them to the periphery of the city. Logan learns that the Ankh symbol is actually a key that unlocks an exit from the city. They come out onto a frozen cave, with Francis following closely behind. In the cave, they meet Box, a robot designed to capture food for the city from the outside. Logan discovers to his horror that Box also captures escaped runners and freezes them for food. Before Box can freeze Logan and Jessica, they escape, causing the cave to collapse on the robot. Not exactly. Many inaccuracies with this plot, but that's alright, we'll cover them in the analysis. Once outside, Logan and Jessica notice that their life clocks are no longer operational. They see the sun for the first time and discover that the remains of human civilization have become a wilderness. They explore an old, seemingly abandoned city which was once Washington, D.C. In the ruins of the United States Senate chamber, they discover an elderly man living with many cats. His appearance is a shock to them, since neither ever seen anyone over the age of 30. The old man recounts what he remembers about what happened to humanity outside the city, and Logan realizes that sanctuary has always been a myth. However, Francis has followed them, and he and Logan fight. Logan fatally wounds Francis. As he dies, Francis sees that Logan's life clock is now clear and assumes Logan is renewed. Logan and Jessica persuade the old man to return to the city with them as proof that life exists outside the domed city. Leaving the man outside, the two enter the city via an underwater tunnel and try to convince everyone that carousel is a lie and unnecessary. The two are captured by their Sandmen and taken to the computer, which interrogates Logan about procedure 033-03 and asks if he has completed his mission. Logan insists there is no sanctuary. What he has found was old ruins, exposed, an old man, and that the missing runners were all frozen. These answers are not accepted by the computer, even after scanning Logan's mind, and the computer overloads, causing the city's systems to fail violently and release the exterior seals. And again, that's not entirely correct either. We'll get to it. Logan, Jessica, and the other citizens flee the ruined city. Once outside, the citizens see the old man, the first human they have met who is older than 30, proving that they can, indeed, live their lives much longer. This is a remarkable science fiction film. There was never really a movie made like it before, and I don't think there'll ever be a movie made like it since. So let's do our deep dive analysis and see what it tells us about connections to the old world and Tartaria. So the film opens sometime in the 23rd century. The survivors of war, overpopulation, and pollution are living in a great domed city, sealed away from the forgotten world outside. Here in an ecologically balanced world, mankind lives only for pleasure, freed by the servo mechanisms which provide everything. There's just one catch. Life must end at 30 unless reborn in the fiery ritual of carousel. What a title card. You know, that opening sentence there almost reads like they could be describing the 19th century. In any event, there's questions: is this movie really the future? Or is this the past? Or could it be both? And that's what makes it a very unique movie, is that the way it's depicted, it legitimately could be both. Although later in the movie they make it very clear it is indeed the future. We see these events that seem to repeat in various accounts of our history and our mythology. Just something interesting to consider with the movie. And we start with amazing views of the geodesic domes. And this is the Dome City in the 23rd century. Something interesting to consider is there was a plan to put a geodesic dome over New York City. And also in the exploration of Towers of Bologna, which John Levi did very effectively, I might add, there's depictions of what appear to be a geodesic dome over the city. And there's lots of statements about how domes still apply. So just something interesting to think about when they show this domed city. And that's how the film begins, with numerous views showing you just how large the domed city really is. Exterior views. And then you move to interior views, where you see how incredibly beautiful and well laid out this city is. And to be fair, it does have what appears to be some inspiring architecture. We see some pyramids, we see some cone shapes, and some variants, along with trees and beauty. So on the outside looking in, we see that there's still life outside the domes, but then on the inside, we see that there's life on the inside, and it's very beautiful, and it looks very orderly, it's very clean, and it's very pleasant to live in. All depicted in a simple opening shot. The first scene of characters involves Logan 5, the Sandman, and the principal protagonist, portrayed brilliantly by Michael York, wonderful actor, and you might be more familiar with him as portraying Basil Exposition in the Austin Powers movies. He's at a nursery, and he's visiting what he believes to be one of his offspring, although the dialogue makes it clear that the people in this city do not know their offspring. And in fact, his best friend asks him, well, do you know who his seed mother was? And he says, no, of course not. I'm curious. I'm not perverted. And so you quickly get an idea of what the concept of the city is all about. And depicted here, you see the life clock, which is implanted in every left hand of every resident of the city. The life clock that tells them how long they have from their birth to their death when it flashes red and they have to report to carousel, or face the consequences of summary execution. And interestingly enough, in the very next scene, you see Michael York and he holds up his own life clock, and you see that it is red, contrasting with what we just saw with the infant that he's looking at earlier. And Michael York does portray someone who is curious, yet at the same time, Logan, the character, is someone who believes in the society and is willing to kill to enforce the aspects of the society. And that's something I thought was interesting because the opening crawl tells us that this city and the people are reliant on servo mechanisms, and yet the actual enforcement of the society revolves around sandmen or policemen, clad in black as Michael York is here. His friend shows up, Francis Seven, who is portrayed by Richard Jordan. Richard Jordan is a wonderful actor, and his performance carries so much in this film in addition to Michael York. Really, the acting in this movie is good across the board, and it helps convey the story. Francis is Logan's best friend, and you might be wondering, well, why is he called Logan 5 and why is he called Francis 7? And the dialogue makes it clear that the infant that Logan is looking at, he thinks may be Logan 6. And Francis tells him, well, that's just insane to even think about such things. You're not supposed to concern yourself here at the nursery with who your successors may be. We're only supposed to concern ourselves with our life as it is. And brilliantly, the movie shows you what kind of society it has and what kind of system it has. And keep in mind, this is not based on any system we're familiar with. This isn't something that we have in our official history that may have inspired this science fiction tale. Yes, it was adapted from the book Logan's Run, but Logan's Run, the novel, is very different from the film. In the novel, Last Day was at the age of 21. And in the novel, people would report to what was called a sleep shop, where they would be issued this very pleasant feeling-induced gas that would kill them. And that's why the policemen were called Sandman there. Now you might say, well, it doesn't apply. Well, they could call them whatever they want to. It's a science fiction society, and I think the translation works great. Francis and Logan wander off, and we quickly get an idea of what the society looks like. We've already been introduced to the life clocks in the hands, and we also see that everybody wears clothing, outside of the Sandmen, of course, who wear their uniforms, that reflects what their life clock is. So you have the children wearing yellow, you have teens and young adults wearing green, and then you have those in their early 20s to 30 wearing red. And so it's interesting how it introduces those stratifications in society. And of course, one of the reasons that I glossed over the themes of Logan's Run from our mainstream Wikipedia article is because I believe that they try to introduce themes that reflect social issues at the time when the movie was made, and of course their unyielding attempts to introduce current social issues into a movie that was made over 40 years ago, which I think they always try to do because they want to keep us debating the same issues. In any event, I don't believe any of that's depicted in this movie. I believe this is a depiction of a true fantastical society that may have existed and may not have existed. And what's interesting is when we see this society, everything seems to be laid out like a giant mall on the inside. So some people say that reflects consumerism society, although they did a good job of finding large locations to film this that were actually indoors. I want to point out the hand here, and the hand with the life clock in the middle of it. You have an entire society. Every aspect of that society is built around the belief that you are born and you die at age 30. You have to face carousel if you're going to live past age 30 for the prospect of renewal. And we'll get to that. As Logan and Francis move through the crowded area, again, you see more examples of the clothing that people are wearing, and you only see the primary colors. There might be a couple different shades, but everything reflects the primary colors. It's very easy to tell who's who and what's what. And there's an interesting scene where Francis encounters a person wearing red and bumps into him, and they share a very aggressive look, and the gentleman moves off, and then Francis, with Richard Jordan in full aggressive mode, says, "That red's gonna run. I know it." Now, we're not exactly sure what that means in the film yet, although we have an idea. It means that this is somebody who's not going to accept the fact that they have to report to carousel for the last day at the age of 30. But just keep in mind that this entire exposition, including the title card, took about 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes, they have conveyed what the society is, what the situation is, given us an idea of who the two main characters are, and done all of this in a short amount of time. That is efficient filmmaking, and it's brilliant world building, all in 3 minutes. Very impressive. As they move to the carousel, again, we see large groups of people, and it gives you the idea of, while the city may be a hedonistic pleasure dome, there are a lot of people within it, and everybody's under the age of 30. And again, we see the symbolism, the life clock reflected here on the wall. It gives you the idea that as these people go about their lives, They're really faced with no challenges, and everything revolves around this simple belief system. And there's really nothing else. You live life to enjoy it and take all the pleasure that you can, and you know that last day is going to come at the age of 30. Now, it should be noted there's some deleted scenes here where both Logan and Francis come across a woman who's in red who is going to report to Carousel. And she says, well, I'm either going to be renewed or I'm not going to make it. And if I don't make it, well, at least I'll have a nice fiery demise. So you see how this entire population is conditioned to accept the situation as it is. And they seem to be somewhat familiar with what it is. Although, what does Carousel offer? And we'll get to that in a second. So the crowd files into the Carousel Arena, and it's an amazing set. And keep in mind, this was all done with practical effects. This movie came out in 1976 and was made before 1976. It preceded Star Wars even. And they used a lot of practical effects, and it gives the film a very realistic feeling. And what's Carousel all about? Well, as Logan and Francis sit down, they talk about who the seed mother of Logan's child may have been. And Logan looks over across the arena, sees three ladies, and says, well, it may have been one of them. And you just get the idea this reflects the whole hedonism concept of the society, because there's really no social responsibility. The computer handles everything. You can pretty much do what you want to. You know, there seem to be very, very limited laws. Basically, as long as you don't inflict physical harm on anybody, you can do as you like, and there's no consequences or repercussions. Now, people would say, well, that's a reflection of the counterculture response in the 1970s. I don't think so. I think really what they were depicting here was what the society could look like and how this would be appealing to people. You just allow them to enjoy their lives and think about nothing else, and that's what they're going to care about. Just focus on the carrot, and then you just have one stick, which in this society is the carousel. And we see individuals walk into the carousel and line up around it, and they're all wearing very ominous-looking white robes, and line up around, again, the symbol, the ultimate symbol of the life clock. Well, what's the carousel all about, we're all wondering. And they hold up their hands as the city computer announces the year of the city 2274, and Capricorn 6s from 2244, so verifies that they're 30 years old. And also interesting that it's still using classic astrological signs to mark the calendar, and that's the city computer that announces this. Well, all these individuals hold up their hands and they show the blinking red life clocks, indicating that they are on their last day and they must report to Carousel. Once showing their hands, the carousel shows a force field that seems to go down and surround them, and then they pull off their robes, revealing these very, very interesting suits that they're wearing, skin tight with flames on them, and this is going to be their chance to renewal. What exactly does this involve? Well, the force field seems to turn off gravity for that area, and the people begin floating up to the ceiling. And all of a sudden, the crowd just goes crazy. Everyone's shouting, renewal, renewal, and you're trying to figure out exactly what this is all about. And they continue to float higher and higher to the ceiling, and the crowd gets more excited, more crazy. And it's an amazing ritual, and there are many different scenes that show these individuals slowly floating to the ceiling, and you're still trying to figure out, okay, what's this renewal about? Do they have to get to the ceiling? Well, suddenly you start seeing people randomly vaporize. And you realize that they're just being systematically killed, and very quickly. And yet the crowd, its fervor increases immensely, and they cheer louder and louder. Well, Logan is interrupted because he gets a report that one of the individuals, who was a Capricorn 6, born in the year of the city 2244, did not report to Carousel. And so he and Francis pursue him. And it's interesting that when they pursue them, they treat it as though it's... quite frankly, somebody hunting someone who's unarmed, which this gentleman is unarmed that they hunt down. Of course, he's wearing red, and Logan and Francis toy with him, just shooting at him probably for about 3 minutes, and finally Francis picks him off with a shot, and it kills him. And it shows you that this is what they view as their society. And Francis says to Logan once they kill this gentleman, well, look at it now. He could have renewed on Carousel, and now he's finished forever. Why would they run? I don't know. So here in the opening scenes of the movie, you've seen everything from life to death, and you understand the main premises behind the society in the city. You also understand how all the people that live in the city are conditioned that this is their reality. There's nothing outside of it, nor should they consider it. And this is the unfortunate gentleman as Logan's just toying with him. And once he's killed, Logan searches him and finds in his hand what appears to be an Ankh symbol. Now, people may not be familiar with that symbol. They may be familiar with the symbol. The film makes it very clear for how it applies. In any event, the body is quickly sprayed by someone operating some sort of machine, and the body disintegrates, and it's like it was never there. And so you see the aspects of the society: report to carousel and hope you'll renew. And it's interesting because it doesn't make it clear what renewal actually is. Does everybody get blasted, and do these people believe that they're just reincarnated into a new child? And that seems to be what they think. Although maybe the promise is if you reach the top of the carousel without getting blasted, then you renew. It's not clear. And yet I think that works because it's not supposed to be clear to these people what renewal actually is. They just believe in it, and that's why they'll report to carousel. And, if you don't make it in the deleted scene, as the woman said, well, at least you'll get a fiery end, and it's just going to be the thrill of a lifetime. Logan and Francis are just delighted with themselves and their handiwork. And in the evening, Logan decides it's time to relax. And so they have this interesting scene where he goes on this transmitter and basically he can find people who put themselves up on it. It's kind of an early concept of social media. Think of dating sites, only you can, instead of just swiping left, you swipe left and bam, you can pick the person and you've got your companion for the evening. Well, he finds this charming young lady, Jessica Six, portrayed by Jenny Agutter. Jenny Agutter is a brilliant actress, and her performance in this movie reflects so many different aspects because she's really the first person that Logan meets who has the creative and inspired mind to question the system. And in their opening conversation that they have when he meets her, she makes it very clear that the whole reason she put herself up on this social media in-person system for random hookups in the evening was because she felt bad that one of her friends died on Carousel. And she said that her friend died. And Logan says, why do you use that word? Died, killed. Nobody dies. Nobody's killed. Sandmen terminate runners. I don't kill anybody. And so the conversation makes it very clear, the first aspect, that there is a portion of the society that wants to diverge from what it's told and what its fundamental beliefs are. And Jessica represents that very well. And of course, you see what she's wearing, what her potential age is, although it doesn't make it clear. She rebuffs Logan's advances very handily and says that it was a mistake that she put herself up on the social media dating platform for random hookups, and that it was a mistake. Logan is a little disappointed, but he's not too upset because he knows he can just go back and find somebody else who's more willing to engage in nocturnal activities. Logan and Francis report to Sandman headquarters, which is co-located with the central building where the city computer is located. And we see a couple Sandmen watching this map depiction, and it shows a Sandman terminating a runner right here. And of course, they repeat the dialogue. Why do they run? I don't know. They're done forever. So again, reinforcing the notion that this is what the Sandmen believe, and they gleefully go about their duty in terminating anybody who does not report to Carousel. Terminating, death, die. They play with words. Everything is brought up in this movie, and it's amazing. Well, Logan reports to his debriefing after Francis debriefs, and Francis puts some items on the desk. They vanish, and Francis is sent on his merry way. Well, when Logan puts the items on the desk, he gets a different response from the city computer, and he is asked to sit down and identify himself by putting his life clock in his left hand on the scanner on the chair. And the computer says, identify. The computer recognizes the object as an Ankh, and it informs Logan that this device, this symbol, is related to a term called sanctuary. And Logan says he's unfamiliar with the word Ankh, and he's totally unfamiliar with the word sanctuary. And the computer lets him know that sanctuary was a pre-catastrophe word for a place of safety. And Logan is just utterly baffled by this. And he wants to ask a question, but the computer cuts him off by telling him that there are 1,056 unaccounted for runners. And Logan is just totally mystified by this. He doesn't see how it's possible. Believing that the Central City computer is totally infallible, it's the only existence he knows, he asks the question, well, maybe some of them renewed. Maybe none of them are runners. They renewed on Carousel. Well, he starts to grow more concerned when the computer responds to him that, no, the number is correct. And then lets slip by not confirming that no one has been renewed. Now, someone may ask the question, wait a minute, why would the computer tell Logan that no one has been renewed? Well, there's two reasons for it. The computer's about to send Logan on a special mission. And remember that this computer is a program. It does not have true intelligence. It is not dynamic. It can only operate within its program. and it seems that the central prime directive of its program is to maintain the society of the city at any cost. But it does understand basic human nature to some extent that's clearly been programmed, and it understands that if it reveals the truth to Logan that no one's been renewed, what's he going to do? Go tell the entire population of the city? Is anybody going to believe him? Are the other Sandmen going to believe him? Absolutely not. So keep that in mind. It's not a plot hole. It actually makes perfect sense if you factor in what the computer's prime directive is, and the fact that if there's one person, only one person who has a truth in an entire society that's been conditioned to believe a different truth their entire lives, are they going to believe him? Yeah, like I said, this movie has everything in it. It's pretty amazing. Logan grows more concerned, realizing that there is no renewal, and the computer clarifies for him the question has been answered. No one has renewed. Logan now understands, to his dread, that life will end at 30. And he's 26. He's only got 4 years left. And Michael York plays the scene very brilliantly with his facial expressions alone. You see someone go from being confident, calm, and collected to realizing that the situation and their entire life understanding is different than they knew. His life is going to be over at 30, and there's no way around it. Well, then the computer puts up procedure 033-03. No, I'm not making that up. There's a screenshot from the movie. That's the number. And Logan is completely baffled as to what this procedure is. Well, the computer explains to him that he is authorized to penetrate city seals, go outside the city, and find this sanctuary where these 1,000 unaccounted for runners are supposedly hiding. And Logan asks, well, I'm only I think he said red 6. How am I going to pretend like I'm approaching last day? Well, then you see this very ominous word, retrogram. Put your life clock on the scanner. He puts his hand on the scanner, retrogram complete, and all of a sudden, he realizes he's flashing red. And it's now last day. And again, Michael York plays it brilliantly with his facial expressions alone. He is now approaching last day. The next run of the carousel next month, he must report, and now he knows there is no renewal. And the computer says he must run, he must find sanctuary. He says, well, what if I need additional help from Sandmen? And the computer says, nope, this is a solo mission. You have to do this on your own. And Michael York says, well, I'm only a red 6. I'm not supposed to report to carousel for 4 more years. Do I get my 4 years back? Naturally, the computer does not answer him and sends him on his way, leaving him confused and scared, as it no doubt intended. Well, now that this is the situation, Logan looks up Jessica because he remembers that Jessica has this mentality that she supports this runner society, this counterculture that exists within the city, and she might have some information. And he has no choice but to carry out his mission. And when he summons Jessica back to his room, he shows her and she says, well, why show me? And he says, because I'm going to run. And she says, well, I thought you were all into terminating people. And all of a sudden he says, no, it's my life. It's me. It's different. Don't you understand? It's quite interesting. And you got to give him credit because it doesn't really portray Logan as being a sympathetic character at all. He's still a Sandman. He still does what he's supposed to do. And even at this point, he hasn't made the jump or the leap in how the world situation, his world understanding, is different than what it really is. He's shocked, he's scared, but he still has a fundamental belief in what he's doing. Well, Logan and Jessica go into the main area, and they receive a call that there's a runner that's hiding out in an area called Citadel, which seems to be an area where they have juvenile delinquents confined in the city. And there's a little conflict between Logan and the juvenile delinquents, and Logan scares them off by firing his weapon. And we find out that there seem to be limited aspects within the city that control the society, but one of the fascinating things is the leader of this little juvenile gang says that he's reaching an age, and Logan threatens him by saying, you're not going to be allowed to be in Citadel. You're going to be going back out to the city, and you're going to have to live by city rules. So quite fascinating that they work that in there. Logan and Jessica find the runner, and of course she's wearing red, and you can see, I didn't get this actor's name, but she portrays this role very well with the fear, and she tries to assure Logan, I'm not approaching last day, I'm only 22, it's a mistake. She's frightened, but Logan reassures her that he's going to run too. And yet this conversation is watched by Francis in the distance, who's followed Logan. So Francis doesn't know about the mission, and yet he follows Logan out of a sense of friendship and loyalty. So while Francis is depicted as a brutal character who is very much indoctrinated with the system of the city, he does have some redeeming qualities. His friendship and his personal loyalty to Logan is depicted through the movie. And again, I think Richard Jordan does a great job of portraying these conflicting characteristics and making it seem very believable. His expression alone sells what his intention is. Well, Logan shows the Ankh. He shows the fact that he's blinking red too and approaching last day, so he's going to run, so therefore he is not going to kill her, and even gives her a little gas pellet that can help her escape if she's cornered by other Sandmen. Well, Logan and Jessica go on their way. Francis comes up, finds the woman, and quickly executes her without hesitation. And again, the expression on Richard Jordan's face. You see that this is a stone-cold killer, yet at the same time, someone who's still a human being. A remarkable dichotomy portrayed in the movie by Richard Jordan. He reports the kill, termination, without any hesitation. And Logan and Jessica decide it's time for Logan to go and get a face change, because he became aware of this when the runner that he killed earlier in the film had a different face than what was on city records. So they report to the doctor here, and Logan's going to get a face change. And the doctor is close to 30 himself, but he looks like he's in his early 20s. And it should be noted that in the plot of the novel, Francis, Logan's best friend, was different because he was actually well into his late 30s and had used plastic surgery to appear to be younger than 21. So I think they found the whole concept of 21 and younger being a little difficult to portray in the film. It should be noted that actor Richard Jordan was in his late 30s. I think he was 37, 38 when he portrayed Francis, who couldn't have been older than 30. But, not all of us can have Richard Jordan's great genetics, I guess. Well, it turns out that the face, or the plastic surgeon or laser surgeon, or whatever you want to call him, the facial reconstruction gentleman, is actually on the side of the runners, and they realize that Logan is potentially coming after them, so he has orders to kill Logan. In a brief struggle, Logan manages to kill him, and it should be noted that Farrah Fawcett has an early role as the assistant Holly here. Well, Logan and Jessica escape, and Francis is in hot pursuit. Francis comes across Art Garfunkel and interrogates him about their whereabouts, but Art Garfunkel didn't see what direction they went, so Francis tells him never to sing Sound of Silence again and sends him on his way. Logan and Jessica escape through a very bizarre sequence where they go to what seems to be some sort of pleasure house. It doesn't really add anything to the plot, but it does reinforce the hedonistic nature of the city. Logan is surrounded by runners with what appear to be some sort of energy pikes and hold him at bay. He shows that he's flashing red, that he's going to run, and they say a Sandman never runs. Well, he clarifies, I'm going to run, and they send him on their way. Yet it should be noted that Logan did send a signal to the Sandmen, and people ask, well, wait a minute, why is Logan doing this? Because Logan still believes that he is on an official mission. He still believes in the computer. He still believes in the society that he's in. So he signals the Sandmen to find this group of runners. He thinks this is his mission right here. And so the Sandmen break in, assault the location, and begin terminating all the runners who don't stand a chance against them. It should be noted, though, that in this scene, that when one of the Sandmen threatens what is either Logan or Jessica, he quickly pulls out his weapon and kills the Sandman. This is really the first action that Logan takes that shows that he has an entirely different perspective. It's really the first major event that shows that he is changing what his belief system is. Now, you could say, well, it's because he had no choice, he was going to be killed, but the Sandman very likely wouldn't have shot him since he was wearing the same uniform, but he did stop Jessica from being killed. So it's quite fascinating to consider those aspects, how he's suddenly developing a little bit of a connection with Jessica. And remember, that's something else that should be considered in the film. Relationships are purely physical. There's not supposed to be any more of a personal connection that people feel with each other. The city and its society have deprived people of that. And yet it's the very premise of that connection that very likely causes Logan to take this extreme action. Well, as they're escaping the situation, Logan encounters Francis through a little fence area, and Francis says, hey, Logan, I could have reported you, but I didn't. I'm your friend. I understand. We all go crazy once in a while. But you have to kill her. He's referring to Jessica. You have to kill her. Well, Logan refuses to comply, and he takes a few warning shots at Francis, ensuring not to hit him but scare him off, which he succeeds. Well, Logan and Jessica escape using the Ankh as a key to a lift that leads them to the periphery of the city and then back to the surface, although it's not exactly clear because the domes are on the surface, so perhaps this is just one of the early access points. And they encounter this character, Box, a very shiny robot voiced by Roscoe Lee Brown. The performance that Roscoe Lee Brown gives is quite brilliant because he manages to show that Box is both a robot that operates on a program, and yet it's clearly operating way beyond the bounds of its programming. Because the robot says, well, I was put here to freeze all the food for the city, fish, protein, plankton from the sea, etc. And in the conversation with Box, Logan believes that Box knows where Sanctuary is. And finally, the robot, tells Logan, yes, I'll show you where Sanctuary is. Yes, we'll show you. And Box shows what's happened to the 1,000 unaccounted for runners. They've all been frozen. So there really is no escape for anybody. He says, once the supplies stopped coming, the runners started coming, and then I froze them. And that's my job. And Box whips out his freeze gun, and he's prepared to do the same thing to Logan and Jessica. But fortunately, Logan is armed with his Sandman standard issue pistol, and he resists Box, enabling him to damage Box, and then they escape as the entire cave collapses on Box. And then there's this brilliant scene where Logan and Jessica see the sun for the first time. And you have to wonder if anybody else has ever been through this situation. It's a recurring theme that you see in post-apocalyptic movies where people have lived underground for such a long time they encounter the sun for the first time. And Michael York portrays it very well, as does Jenny Agutter. Well, it's warm. Let's move towards it. They take a little swim together, and Jessica realizes that their life clocks are no longer operational, that they're crystal clear and they're free. And they take joy in that. And also you see the development of their personal relationship. They're no longer just a couple people who are just looking for a physical hookup. They've been through some situations together. They've developed some trust. And you also see that this continues the journey for Logan. That started really when he shot the Sandman, but now that he's encountered Box, now that he's seen the sun in the outside world, he's making that leap. It should be noted, though, that at the start of the movie made it very clear that Logan's character did have the ability to embrace some creativity and imagination. Francis, on the other hand, did not. Francis was committed to the system no matter what. And there's a scene where Francis follows them and sees the sun for the first time as he gets out of the city, and he seems completely bewildered and not sure what to make of it. Well, now they wander into what's very clearly the ruins to us of Washington, D.C., and you see the Washington Monument, and of course they have no idea what it's all about or what it suggests. And it's interesting to think about this when we think about our own explorations of looking at buildings that we can't explain. Well, this is the situation that they come across, and this is what they're facing, and they really don't have any idea what it's all about or what these structures could possibly represent. Just wanted to point out the fact that they do a very good job of blending what are either sets or actual houses with matte paintings, and it gives you an idea of a real sense of scale. And if you watch the movie, you see that when they ascend the stairs of the U.S. Capitol into the Senate chamber, which is where they meet the old man, it's quite very well done, and it really gives you the sense of awe and wonder that both Logan and Jessica are encountering. Well, here's where they meet Peter Ustinov, who plays the old man, unnamed. And the old man is all that remains of the old world society. Yes, I know that seems a little cliche, but if you think about it, he's the only connection that Logan and Jessica have to the society because he seems to be the only survivor who's left. And he relates to them what happened. And he doesn't really have a lot of clues or ideas. You don't know really how many generations it's been since the cataclysms occurred. He doesn't know what's happened to other people. All he knows about is his parents and that he buried them when they died. And that's really about it. And you think about that and that kind of separation. Now, this isn't a guy who's lived under any sort of controlled system. He's simply gone through the human lifespan where he's reliant on his memories and all he has to go off of is what other people have told him. Now, he does have some very scattered knowledge about what Washington, D.C. used to be and even about what the United States used to be. But it's very limited. And really all he has is just, some certain statements. Well, this guy never told a lie, supposedly. And, really you see how it's descended into myth. And it gives you the idea for how certain things that we consider myth could have potentially once been fact. It's very brilliantly depicted. I'm not always the greatest fan of Peter Ustinov, and I apologize to any of my viewers who are a fan of him, but he had a very interesting life where he hosted Nuclear Nightmares in 1980, and that started our obsession with nuclear scare films in the 1980s. And then later, he was president of the World Federalist Movement from, I think it was 1991 to his death. And the World Federalist Movement was a non-governmental organization that was a proponent of a worldwide governmental organization. So take that for what it is. Look, if there's ever anything annoying about him, just go watch The Great Muppet Caper and you can see Miss Piggy toss him out of his truck into a pile of garbage next to Oscar the Grouch. No joke, it really happened. So he gives them the background on what's going on with civilization as well as he understands it and what happened to it and why it's all ruins. And again, it's scattered information, it's very well written, and it feels very real, what he's conveying. Well, Francis finally catches up with Logan and Jessica and engages in a hand-to-hand fight with Logan. And Francis, very well played again by Richard Jordan, clearly seems to be physically superior and more skilled than Logan. And a couple times it seems as though he almost has Logan done for. Logan's just barely able to hold him off. And interestingly enough, Francis grabs the flagpole behind him that still has a US flag on it, no less, and attempts to strangle Logan with it. Well, Logan's finally able to turn the tables on Francis and then beats him to death with the flagpole. And as Francis lays dying, Logan tries to comfort him, and Francis sees the life crystal in Logan's hand that's clear. And what's Francis's thought? Well, his thought is, Logan, you're renewed. And he dies in comfort, and Richard Jordan plays it brilliantly, because he's had no arc. He has lived and died in the system imposed upon him by the city. He believes in renewal and carousel. And despite all the things he's seen, the sun, the ruins outside, the indication, the fact that there is another world beyond the city, he does not believe it. He does not grasp it, and he cannot leap from the confines, from the constraints that were imposed upon him from birth by that city. And it's an amazing portrayal. So Francis is not only a great character in this movie, he also represents a segment of society that does not want to see things outside of what they've already been told. And a lot of credit has to be given to Richard Jordan, because this scene is touching at the same time. You feel bad for Francis for a variety of reasons, but you also understand why Logan did what he had to do. He had no choice. So at this point, Logan and Jessica realize that they have to return to the city because there are millions of people who are facing death on Carousel and they don't have to die. Meeting the old man is proof that someone can live well beyond 30. And they take the old man with him because he's never really met anybody. The only human contact he's had outside of Logan and Jessica appear to be his parents, and there's really nobody else. So he accompanies them, but to get back in the city, they have to go through this interesting water exchange system, and he has to wait. And Logan and Jessica say, "We'll bring the people to you." So Logan goes back in the city with Jessica just as another scheduled occurrence of Carousel is happening. And Logan is quickly captured by the Sandmen and brought to the computer for an interrogation. And this is where you get the famous scene where the computer interrogates Logan and he says, "There is no sanctuary, all ruins, all frozen." The ultimate irony I thought about watching this scene is that the computer had sent Logan to find the runners, the 1,000 runners who had gotten away, and it turned out that Box had already frozen them all. So in the end, no runners had actually escaped. The computer had initiated this mission all on poor information. So again, it's another indication that computers only operate with programs, and they're not capable of dynamic or creative thought. They're very useful tools, but we give them inputs, and they give us outputs. They are incapable of making decisions and responding to a situation dynamically. And this is brilliantly shown in this movie. The computer cannot accept what it draws from Logan's mind. It interrogates him. It's unacceptable. And finally, the computer has a malfunction, and Logan breaks free from his restraints, and he begins fighting with the Sandman, grabbing his weapon. Now, it should be noted that everybody thought, and when they watched this movie, that the fact that the computer couldn't accept what it got from Logan's mind is what caused it to be destroyed. Well, that's not true. Logan actually gets the idea when a Sandman tries to shoot him and misses that it hits what seems to be one of the main data banks or a central processing unit potentially of this amazing computer. And he shoots it himself. Blink and you'll miss it. It's very fast, but it does happen, and that's why I included a screenshot of it. So Logan realizes that this computer system is controlling them and it offers them nothing as human beings, and he decides to destroy it based on what he's learned. This is really the completion of his arc. Logan is now willing to live outside of the world imposed upon him by the city. Jessica's already achieved this freedom much earlier in the movie, but now Logan joins her. Well, the city central computer is destroyed, and this opens up the major gateways to the city. Now, it's not really depicted in the movie, but you can draw the inferences from what you see. And the main building and the computer on top of it is destroyed. The city opens up, and the people come out, and they come across the old man. And they see that it is possible to live beyond 30 for the first time. And it's a very interesting scene where they're just all simply looking at the old man, just shocked at what it means to be old and that there is life beyond 30, because this is completely outside not only the experience but the belief system of all the people that have lived in the city their entire lives. And the movie ends, and it's interesting because this wonderful scene of Logan and Jessica together is superimposed with scenes of the interior of the city being destroyed. Now, how does Logan's Run connect to the old world in Tartaria, potentially, and the explorations that we've been doing? So what conclusions and connections can we draw from Logan's Run concerning the old world in Tartaria? Well, there are several that are depicted in the movie. And let's start first and foremost with resets. There are two very clear resets in this movie. There's the war and overpopulation, supposedly, and then there's another reset when the city computer is destroyed and they escaped. This depicts a controlled society, a society that everything is controlled from birth to death, and yet you can live a hedonistic lifestyle. However, this control is dependent upon consent. It requires consent from people. If all the people decided not to adhere to the control, report to Carousel, or enforce reporting to Carousel, the society would collapse overnight. It features character journeys. Some people are already capable of having creativity and imagination, such as Jessica. Logan has to go on a journey to get there, and Francis is unable to get there, despite having strong character qualities in and of himself. It depicts a domed city, something that comes up quite a bit in many theories of reset in previous civilizations. It shows the ruins of Washington, D.C. being non-understood. It does not depict any limitations in language because the old man that they encounter still speaks the same language, which is quite remarkable. And finally, it shows recursion loops. Wait a minute, what are recursion loops? Well, recursion loops are something any of us can be stuck in our lives, and we have to be aware of them. We can become stuck on anything, whether it's sports or even these kind of studies. That's why we have to continue to ask questions and continue to expand and broaden ourselves. This film is a warning of that. And in total, I think that shows Old World and Tartaria in the movies. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this exploration of Logan's Run. Remember, ask questions, explore yourself, and you'll restore the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome to the Restitutor Orbis channel. Thank you for joining me today as we continue our film reviews with an Old World Tartaria film review of Metropolis, the channel's first in-depth film review of Fritz Lang's classic masterpiece, the pioneering science fiction film and one of the last great films of the silent era. So in the interest of understanding what my perception is in viewing this film, I grew up a fan of science fiction films and TV series, and that includes everything, not just limited to Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who. I certainly watched all three of those and am well aware of them. I'd never seen Metropolis before. In fact, prior to viewing the film for this review, the oldest film I had watched was a film called Northwest Passage, a 1940 film starring Spencer Tracy, set during the 7 Years' War, what's also called the French-Indian War. So very different film, very different genre. I'd only seen scenes from silent films before. I'd never watched an entire silent film all the way through from start to finish. This was the first time I had that experience. So I think that's important to keep in mind when you're listening to this review, what my perception is. And one thing to remember about silent films is they relied entirely on the expression of the characters, the framing of the scenes. There was no dialogue. You couldn't get any kind of tone or any sort of inflection within the voices. They just didn't have it because they didn't speak. So they relied on a different means of conveying a message in the film. It's important to keep that in mind through the review, and it's also important to keep that in mind if you opt to watch this movie, because there are some ways that this movie can be extremely dazzling, and it contains some scenes that are just difficult to explain because we're not used to watching these kind of films. Films have changed a lot even over the last 40 years. Just the genre and the themes, while they may seem to be the same, the method of telling a story has changed. So let's look at Metropolis. There will be spoilers in this review, so if you want to watch the film prior to watching the review, I encourage you to do so, but we need to understand the film, how it was made, what the plot is, before we look into a review. Metropolis is a 1927 German expressionist science fiction film directed by Fritz Lang and written by Thea von Harbo in collaboration with Lang from von Harbo's 1925 novel of the same name, which was intentionally written as a treatment. So it sounds very similar to the story of how 2001, another pioneering science fiction film that would come out well over 40 years after this with Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke. It stars Gustav Froelich, Alfred Abel, Rudolf Klein-Roeg, and Bridget Helm. Eric Palmer produced it in the Babelsberg Studios for Universum Film. The silent film is regarded as a pioneering science fiction movie, being among the first feature-length movies of that genre. Filming took place over 17 months in 1925 to 1926 at a cost of more than 5 million Reichsmarks, or the equivalent of about 21 million euros. Now, they say that that's how much it would cost today, which I find interesting because when we look at some of the images from this film, 21 million euros right now at the exchange rate, probably about close to $23 million. It seems like they made this at a bargain. So who knows what it actually cost to make, because again, that's something else that can be obscured over time, and we're looking at a movie that's already almost 100 years old. Made in Germany during the Weimar period, and for those who aren't familiar with it, the Weimar period is the interwar period between World War I, the rule of the Kaiser, and World War II, the National Socialist regime in Germany. Metropolis is set in a futuristic urban dystopia and follows the attempts of Freder, the wealthy son of the city master, and Maria, a saintly figure to the workers, to overcome the vast gulf separating the classes in their city and bring the workers together with Fredersen, the city master. The film's message is encompassed in the final intertitle: "The mediator between the head and the hands must be the heart." Metropolis met mixed reception upon release. Critics found it visually beautiful and powerful. The film's art direction, along with the touches of the Gothic in the scenes in the catacombs, the cathedral, and Rotwang's house, so very interesting, the scenes that we already have described, and lauded its complex special effects, but accused its story of being naive. H.G. Wells described the film as silly, and the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction calls the story trite and its politics ludicrously simplistic. Its alleged communist message was also criticized. Interesting that H.G. Wells was a discerned critic of the film, especially given the fact as to how he viewed class conflict with his view of the Morlocks and so forth from his story, The Time Machine. So apparently someone trying a different thing, trying to tell a different story, didn't appeal to him. So according to this account, it seems that how we viewed things with our perceptions has always been with us. Not a surprise. The film's long running time also came in for criticism. It was cut substantially after its German premiere. Many attempts have been made since the 1970s to restore the film. In 1984, Italian music producer Giorgio Moroder released a truncated version with a soundtrack by rock artists including Freddie Mercury, Loverboy, and Adam Ant. Boy, talk about bringing a movie to the contemporary frame. In 2001, a new reconstruction of Metropolis was shown at the Berlin Film Festival. In 2008, a damaged print of Lang's original cut of the film was found in a museum in Argentina. To quote the opening explanation in the restored film, the material was heavily damaged, and because it had been printed on 16mm film stock, does not have the full aperture silent picture ratio. In order to maintain the scale of the restored footage, the missing portion of the frame appears black. Black frames indicate points at which footage is still lost. After a long restoration process that required additional materials provided by a print from New Zealand, the film was 95% restored and shown on large screens in Berlin and Frankfurt simultaneously on 12 February 2010. Metropolis is now widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential films ever made, ranking 35th in a poll. In 2001, the film was inscribed on UNESCO's Memory of the World Register, the first film thus distinguished. On New Year's Day 2023, the film's United States copyright expired, entering the public domain in that country. So quite a legacy with this film, and it's interesting to consider the fact that this film has been altered so many times, has been changed so many times, and of course that's something that even more modern films, we'll just refer to Star Wars, have come under criticism for how much the film has been changed from its original vision or modified as different technology, different times become available. It seems to be something that happens a lot with science fiction films. Now let's take a look at the plot. In the future, wealthy industrialists and business magnates and their top employees reign over the city of Metropolis from colossal skyscrapers, while underground-dwelling workers toil to operate the great machines that power it. Fredersen is the city's master. His son Freder idles away his time at sports and in a pleasure garden, but is interrupted by the arrival of a young woman named Maria, who has brought a group of workers' children to witness the lifestyle of their rich brothers. Maria and the children are ushered away, but Freder becomes fascinated by her and goes to the lower levels to find her. In the machine halls, he witnesses the explosion of a huge machine that kills and injures numerous workers. Freder has a hallucination that the machine is a temple of Moloch and the workers are being fed to it. When the hallucination ends, and he sees the dead workers being carried away on stretchers, he hurries to tell his father about the accident. Grote, the foreman of the Heart Machine, brings Fredersen secret maps found on the dead workers. Fredersen fires his assistant Josephat for not being the first to bring him details about the explosion or the maps. After seeing his father's cold indifference towards the harsh conditions faced by the workers, Freder secretly rebels against him by deciding to help the workers. He enlists Josephat's assistance and returns to the machine halls, where he trades places with a worker who has collapsed from exhaustion. Fredersen takes the maps to the inventor Rotwang to learn their meaning. Rotwang has been in love with a woman named Hel, who left him to marry Fredersen and later died giving birth to Freder. Rotwang shows Fredersen a robot he has built to resurrect Hel. The maps show a network of catacombs beneath Metropolis, and the two men go to investigate. They eavesdrop on a gathering of workers, including Freder. Maria addresses them, prophesizing the arrival of a mediator who can bring the working and ruling classes together. Freder believes he can fill the role and declares his love for Maria. Fredersen orders Rotwang to give Maria's likeness to the robot so that it can discredit her among the workers, but is unaware that Rotwang plans to use the robot to destroy Metropolis and ruin both Fredersen and Freder. Rotwang kidnaps Maria, transfers her likeness to the robot, then sends the robot to Fredersen. Freder finds the two embracing and, believing it is the real Maria, falls into a prolonged delirium. Intercut with his hallucinations, the false Maria unleashes chaos through Metropolis, driving men to murder and stirring dissent among the workers. Freder recovers and returns to the catacombs, accompanied by Josephat. Finding the false Maria urging the workers to rise up and destroy the machines, he accuses her of not being the real Maria. The workers follow the false Maria from their city to the machine halls, leaving their children behind. They destroy the machines, triggering a flood in their city deeper underground. The real Maria, having escaped from Rotwang's house, rescues the children with help from Freder and Josephat. Grot berates the celebrating workers for abandoning their children in the flooding city. Believing their children to be dead, the historical workers capture the false Maria and burn her at the stake. A horrified Freder watches, not understand the deception until the fire reveals her to be a robot. Rotwang becomes delusional, seeing the real Maria as his lost Hel, and chases her to the roof of the cathedral, pursued by Freder. The two men fight as Fredersen and the workers watch from the street, and Rotwang falls to his death. Freder fulfills his role as mediator by linking the hands of Fredersen and Grot to bring them together. So that's the plot. Definitely something contemporary from that time, but yet we have so many allusions and so many elements of the plot that could be referring to other things that we're going to look at in detail when we look at stills from the film. Also, something else to note. Apparently, Fritz Lang, who's an Austrian filmmaker, although this is a German film, went to the United States with the rule of the National Socialists, and Thea von Harbaugh stayed within Germany, and it seems as though her career was suppressed, and while she took part in films, it appears that many of those films were supportive of that regime that ruled Germany from the 1940s. So it's interesting how her career really seemed to only be a highlight with this movie, and it's as though she sort of faded into obscurity afterwards, despite apparently having immense talent and being able to bring about this kind of plot. So not sure, we really don't know. Remember that this is from over 100 years ago when a lot of this was developed and filmed. So that's something we need to keep in mind as we look at the stills and analyze the film in more depth. It has been suggested that Metropolis could very well be a film, or at least material from Metropolis was something from the old world, Tartaria, the previous civilization, whatever you want to call it. And on this channel, I do use the term Tartaria because that's the easy search term, but we have no idea what the civilization that preceded ours was called. And it's just important to keep in mind. One of the reasons I lamented the fact that Lang and von Harbaugh were unable to collaborate more, their relationship deteriorated after making this film, and they were a married couple and then divorced, is that if they did create this film, it's a brilliant film. It stands out in many different ways. And as we go through the images, you'll see that it no doubt inspired essentially all the science fiction films throughout the entire 20th century and leading to today. I think it's important to remember that what we see was made at a time, and they do have production stills. They do show pictures of making these amazing sets, but it's still almost otherworldly. And you'll see that. Now, the film begins soon after its premiere. They remind you that they don't even have the full film. It was chopped to pieces. It's been edited, modified. They did the 80s rock version with Adam Ant providing the soundtrack. Oh, I don't know if I'd ever want to see that. Nothing against Adam Ant. It's just, when you mix genres and time frames, things get really confusing. But they remind you the material was heavily damaged, and because it had been printed on 16mm film stock, they don't have the full aperture silent picture ratio. So film has been modified at the end of the day. Black frames indicate points at which footage is still lost. So it's just important to remember that this film has been heavily modified. What was the original intention if this was a film that was made in the 20s, as we believe, or as we may not believe? We do know that it has been changed, and they're telling us that it's been changed. The film opens with this scene of the clock. And one thing that a lot of researchers have commented on is that this is a 10-hour clock. 10-hour clock perhaps representing a different civilization that counted time in a different way. However, the movie and the plot specifies that the 10-hour clock is for the workers who work underground, and the 24-hour clock above it represents regular time for the masters and planners of the city who live above ground. Both interpretations are valid. My interpretation is that it's something much more insidious. What this opening scene is showing us is how time can be controlled, how the perception of time can be changed. For the workers, 10 hours, they believe it's 10 hours and they're getting a good deal. They're only having to work 10 hours. But in reality, the 10 hours of their shift are actually 12 hours counted on the clock above. And that's potentially because every minute in worker time on the 10-hour clock is really 72 seconds a minute, as opposed to the standard 60 seconds a minute in the city master's clock. For me, it's more of an interesting perception that if you can control time, you can control how people see the world, and you can also control how people function in the world. I think that's what it's alluding to. Now, it's not to say that I discount the theory that this could be a clock from some other civilization, but I believe that's more of a valid point, and it's more of a terrifying point to me because it shows a manner in which time can be controlled. And of course, we open up with an amazing cityscape photo. We've got the bells and the whistles going off, indicating what's supposed to be a shift change, indicated by the black card that tells us what's going on, as this is a silent movie. And we see the shift change. Now, what's really remarkable is that if you view this film and you go off of the plot and you go off of the intercut cards that tells you what's going on, there's an entirely other way that you can view this film, this being a silent film. You can completely ignore what the cards are telling you, and you can just look at the scenes and develop your own meanings for the scenes. It's really that easy to do. I'm sure you've seen plenty of recut episodes of Star Trek or other movies that people have done on YouTube over the years, and that's footage that even has dialogue, and yet they're able to recut that dialogue and make coherent scenes. Well, just imagine this. All you have are these title cards that tells you what the plot narrative is. All you have is a lot of imagery. So in this imagery, we're told that these are workers going underground to work, and that this is a shift change. But it could have different meanings to it. We could also see this as people who are being herded underground. Again, we have this meaning that people are being moved underground, and the imagery supports that. And of course, it's just a procession, an amazing set here that you see with some of the details built out. And again, this is a complete set. And still, when I look at the budget of this movie, I'm just amazed, especially when we see some of the images going forward. But this is remarkable because all these extras, supposedly, being moved to what is a shift change, or it could represent people being moved underground, some other people being released from the underground. Many different ways to look at it. And of course, they get on this big elevator, and it's a long, long ride down deep in the underground. And interestingly enough, the film does an amazing job of showing you their journey underground, and you see that there's an entire underground city, which is a remarkable concept in and of itself, and it's something that we encounter in many theories of the old world about how previous existing populations were herded or shepherded underground. And here we see a depiction of this in the movie Metropolis, science fiction movie. But is it depicting something in the future or depicting something in the past? They arrive, and again, just look at this amazing set, the elevator and the build out of the set. And, all this was done practically. These sets were built. There was no special effects. This was 1925, 1926 when they filmed the majority of this. But again, you're left with this image of what we're told are workers, but these could just be people who are being completely controlled and brought to the underground, a place they may not want to be. And again, just the impressive aspect of the set. This is the underground city as the workers are going towards their daily routine, their 10-hour, really 12-hour day, if we go off of what the clock shows us. And could it represent something else? Yes, absolutely. This could represent just a group of people being brought to live underground for a long period of time or for the rest of their lives. Again, images, scenes, but no dialogue. We contrast that unfortunate scene of people being herded underground to how people on the surface live. And we see an amazing, remarkable building, remarkable architecture. And this is supposed to represent the city controllers, masters of the city, if you will, the planners, and their society, which is a beautiful society. They live above ground. They have all the access and the privileges. Could this be representing something else? Could this be representing what society could be if people worked together and if we had a true understanding of society and we were able to reach to its greatest heights? Yes, it could represent that as well. This could represent what life can be, or it could indeed be a contrast to what we saw in the scene before. It's beautiful, and it depicts just enjoying yourself in leisurely activities on a beautiful day. We also see, and this is a very interesting scene, this group of city planners, how they live in what's a major city garden. Now, here's what's interesting to me is that the plants in this garden, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know if this was just supposed to be a science fiction imagining or some sort of creative view as to what the world could be or what they could do with gardens, but I've never seen plants or anything like this except in the Voynich manuscript. That's the only place I've ever seen where you have anything that looks like what's depicted in the scene. So I'm not sure what they're saying here. I'm not sure where their inspiration came from for filming this, but again, it's an amazing set, and it does give you the concept that this is taking place on another world or perhaps a different world. So you can see why, as we go through the scenes, people could think that there's some very unique aspects to this movie, and it's quite remarkable. And of course, we have the courting scene of Freder, the son of the master of the city, and he's enjoying his high society life and the intention of many potential spouses trying to gain his attention. But look at the costumes, and one thing we'll pay attention to going forward is just some of the expressions that we see on faces in this movie. Now, we know this is a silent film, so everything's dependent on the expression of the faces, how they could frame a scene. They didn't have dialogue. They couldn't rely on tone and inflection in the voice, so they just had to go with all imagery. This is very interesting because this is where Maria just shows up at this garden, and supposedly with her are children of the workers below ground. But it's fascinating that we have just a group of many children who have no parents with them and just one saintly adult figure who's conducting them around. And according to the plot, it's said that she brings this group of children to see their quote-unquote brothers, the city masters planners who live above ground. This could definitely be representing many other things, though. This could be representing one surviving adult bringing a group of children underground back to the surface. And we've seen that theory, and that's come up a lot. And here it is in imagery. So it's something we have to keep in mind. And a close-up of Maria again with all these children. I mean, when you think of the plot, it's interesting that all the workers would just be all right with their children being conducted around by this woman, albeit this is a woman that they respect, that she is supposedly a voice of the workers. Although one of the plot threads that comes up later is how the workers are so focused on what they have to do to keep the city running that they don't pay attention to their children, and this is why they're running off on their own. But could this have many different meanings? Absolutely. It's an image. Take it for what it is. Of course, Freder is just enamored with her, and one thing to pay attention to about this is just what you get in the eyes. It's almost as though there's some filmmaking technique or some manner of depicting this that shows amazing detail in the eyes. And we'll keep that in mind as we go forward. And of course, Maria has probably the most striking eyes through the movie, and that is most certainly by design. And her eyes go through many different variations that we'll see. She is the saintly figure of humanity, and yet at the same time, you see later in the plot what happens to her and how that can be subverted. And of course, the city authorities conduct her and the children away. They're not allowed to be on the surface, and that's what this represents. And again, looking at this garden, just amazing, almost science fiction plants on an alien world. And again, the only place I've seen anything like this is in other science fiction films or looking at the Voynich manuscript. So very inspired creativity. Or is this representing something that somebody saw in the past and they wanted to put in this film? That's entirely possible too. Now we go back to the underground and some amazing sets here that were fully built out. Just the size of these sets is remarkable. And the imagination to depict this, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the underground of this amazing city metropolis, or are we looking at something else that's representing of what may have existed? We don't know for sure. Could this even be footage from some other world or some other time? Anything's possible. But whether it was inspired or whether it's a direct film, it is remarkable to consider that looking at this footage. And here is one of the main machines and another very impressive set that was fully built out. Here you have workers on what is apparently a set operating this machine. And this is one of the critical scenes of the film that really sets up the plot that occurs right here with this machine. And you see how the workers toil away doing their 10, actually 12-hour days according to the plot. And it's just incessant work, and they're barely able to maintain their workload. Now, interestingly enough, the machine transforms into what appears to be a giant monster. And you do have this term thrown in, Moloch, although it should be noted that this is thrown in a title card. So is this really Moloch? Well, according to the title card and the plot of the film, it is. And it is interesting when you think about the fact that these workers, and this is an image from Freder, the son of Frederson, supposedly being sacrificed to Moloch. And of course, you have the high priests of Moloch, and these poor workers are just being sacrificed into the giant mouth here of Moloch. It's interesting symbolism, and it definitely has a lot of different meanings to it. Now, of course, the main plot will just say this is Freder seeing how these workers are treated, but this could have other meanings. We've looked on this channel about what happens underground and how people were sacrificed. There's also the recurring theme, whether it be in myth or theology, about how when human beings go underground, terrible things tend to happen to them. Well, you see that theme reflected in this movie. So after witnessing this, and what happens from Freder's point of view is that it's merely an accident and many of the workers are killed, but he sees it as Moloch and the workers being sacrificed to Moloch. He decides to go talk to his father, Frederson. And Frederson, who is the city master, operates in this amazing building called the New Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel is a very important plot piece in this movie, and it's part of its imagery. But just look at these amazing buildings. You even have aircraft. There are airplanes depicted, although this looks a lot more futuristic than that. It's just remarkable. Supposedly, Fritz Lang was inspired by a trip to New York City in the 1920s, and we know that New York in the 1920s looked a lot different. In any event, it's an amazing image, and the New Tower of Babel is definitely one of the most powerful images of buildings from this movie, but there are many more. And this is the amazing office layout that you see, and again, just another remarkable set with the detail that was put into it and giving you the idea of something that's very futuristic. And another recurring theme is the large doors, and you see that in many different scenes and many different sets throughout the movie. This is incredibly beautiful, this juxtaposition of different types of buildings. And when you look and study at this photo very carefully, you see everything from brutalist architecture to supposedly this film was inspired by the Art Deco. And remember that Art Deco, that building style, was big in the 1920s, although we have plenty of examples of buildings that were built well before the 1920s that displayed the Art Deco style. One of the big examples I've come across was Kansas City Union Station. But when you look at this imagery, it's just remarkable. I mean, this is really where we see so much of the imagery that inspired the creative science fiction scenes in all of our favorite science fiction movies from the second half of the 20th century to today. And it looks like here you have the new Tower of Babel and how it lays out in the center of the city. And this is a juxtaposed scene where you've got many different buildings working together. Quite amazing. Also, something you could consider an urban nightmare, inspiring and disturbing all at the same time. Another view of the new Tower of Babel, looking at it from the top down and just giving you an idea of its intricacy and all the detail that went into building it. These aren't the block, glass, and steel skyscrapers that we see now that are so prevalent in the late 20th and 21st century. This is something of a completely different design that's inspired and remarkable. And just looking at it, you can get that context from it. Other imagery in the movie, we just have amazing monuments and amazing views of how humanity functions and appreciates itself. One of the contrasting aspects in this movie, whether you take its plot at face value or you think it's a different plot, is you understand the dynamics between humanity. And the fact that they refer to the Tower of Babel, which it's not just the cards, you see iteration of the Tower of Babel. And of course we come to the robot that's factored primarily in the plot. And not looking at the plot, I just want you to look at the imagery that you see in this scene alone. And you can look at the robot and what it represents, a changing of humanity, humanity becoming automatic or an automaton species, if you will. Of course, you can't help but notice the symbol right above it and what that could potentially represent. And going in closer, just an amazing image and something that had never been seen before in the 1920s with the imagery of the robot. It looks lifelike, and yet at the same time, I'm sure you can see what, I'll just say, droid it inspired in a certain 1970s blockbuster science fiction movie. In any event, when you think about this, there is something disturbingly lifelike about this robot, and yet at the same time, it's artificial. It's an amazing amalgamation, and it hints towards the threat that humanity could be facing, not just in automatons themselves, but how humanity can become automatic. That's how I choose to interpret this imagery. And of course, we go back to the clock and Fredder trying to save or help the workers, and this is an analogy, but at the same time, this could represent how the perception of time is different and how time is controlled, and understanding that. One of the easiest ways to escape being controlled is to have your own perceptions, because if your perceptions go along with the forces that are trying to control you, well, their reality becomes your reality, and this reflects that. The Tower of Babel. This is a major plot point in the movie, and the imagery that we see reflects that, and the story of the Tower of Babel. And we'll look at that in the conclusions as to why that is so important, also for considering this from an old world and Tartarian legends perspective. Of course, we have vast groups of people to the Tower of Babel story that the creators had this amazing idea, but building out this idea was difficult for the people. And here's one of the title blocks. Now, again, we don't know if this was inserted later in the footage or what, but the hands that built the Tower of Babel knew nothing of the dream of the brain that had conceived it. And of course, they show the imagery of the Tower of Babel, the dream that conceived it. And then they show people hauling a very, very large block that looks like it could be on its way to the Temple of Baalbek. How people could move that is completely beyond imagination, but they do show an image of it, of thousands of people toiling away to move the blocks in place to build the Tower of Babel. And of course, a reference, great is the world and its creator. Just remarkable, though. And they show the Tower of Babel collapsed. And remember that in the movie, we feature the new Tower of Babel. That is where Fredersen, the city master's headquarters, is. Now we go back to this image of Maria, and you can see the eyes changing quite a bit, as though she's lost some of her autonomy. She looks as though she's in a bit of a trance, and that goes along with the image of the robot. You look at the robot, and you have to juxtapose the trance that Maria's in with the robot. There's more than what's going on with the plot. I believe this represents a threat to humanity and how we can simply become lockstep and simply following whatever authority tells us without ever even asking questions. It's how I choose to interpret what the movie's imagery is telling us. Now, could this be something else? Absolutely. Could it just be the plot of the movie? Yes, it could be. This was another powerful scene from the movie, and this is where we see the essence of Maria being transferred to the robot. And again, this could represent other aspects just by the imagery alone. Perhaps surrendering our spirits, our souls, or even our autonomy and self-reliance to machines and to others simply because it's easier. Many different interpretations of it. This is one of the most iconic scenes in the movie in addition to the building imagery, and here is where you get this really, really strange aspect with the eyes. I don't know how they did this. I don't know how this was achieved or what this really represented, because when you look at these eyes, it's almost like they achieved a cat-like eye effect. Narrow slits, and you look at all the other eyes, and it's just a remarkable, disturbing scene all at the same time. I don't know if this was some technique of filmmaking. They just used context. They used a little bit of everything. It's possible. Could it represent something else? Yes. Could it represent how people become changed and succumb to their more base desires? Absolutely. It's incredible, though, however you look at it. And it's a disturbing scene, especially in the way that it's framed and in the fact that it shows you every expression. And you see human suffering, you see human righteousness and indignation. And it's easy to see what this can lead to. And yet another image of the eyes of Maria. And here you have a contrasting image where you see them bright and yet depicting so much character. And again, I'm not sure how they achieve this. It's an amazing effect, and certainly open to theories in the comments. And I would love to hear what you have to say, what you think these pictures of the eyes represent. And we have Maria going back down to encourage the workers for the revolt, or the robot. And the workers begin their revolt. And this is an interesting machine, the heart machine, another amazing set, and something that could represent other technology, we're not sure, or it could just simply be what it is in the movie. And then, of course, we get our flood that's caused by the workers sabotaging the machine. Now, the flood is a remarkable scene, and they show it completely destroying the underground city. Another question is, why would they have an underground city if the workers live above ground? Why would they be doing the shift change? It was something I was thinking about as I was watching it. But nevertheless, the underground city and the people who clearly seem to reside there, because the children are brought up from the underground. That's kind of a contradiction in the story, but nevertheless, we have a flood and it destroys the underground. And of course, you have the workers trying to escape and the terror that they face. This is interesting because this is part of the cathedral, I believe, if I remember correctly. And some of the imagery of ghouls on the cathedral are quite remarkable. And then, of course, we have a vast group of people approaching the cathedral. Amazing set again. Look at this arch and the doors. And, I mean, no detail spared. Just remarkable. And then all the extras approaching this. And then, of course, we're coming to the end of the movie where we have the main plot resolved, and we find out that the mediator, who is Freder, the son of Frederson, which is also an interesting alternative to how names typically work, between head and hands must be the heart. And then the final scene, where we have the city master and the spokesperson of the workers being brought together by Freder. That's what the plot tells us. But could this image mean something else? Yes, there is also the concept of the Trinity. It's easy to see how our society, and even the societies that preceded ours, at least in the history that we read, are totally obsessed with the concept of duality and polarized duality. There's always two sides, there's never more. What's interesting about this movie is that this depicts three sides, a balance, a trinity. It's definitely remarkable, and it's all part of the imagery in this movie. I highly encourage you to watch this movie and draw your own opinions and perceptions of it. It is a remarkable movie. You've never seen anything like it because the imagery is just something that does not match what we see in current movies. Yes, it requires a little bit of patience and understanding that you're watching a different movie from a different time, but there could be other meanings from it. It could represent something else that happened or different perceptions at a different time. Or it could genuinely be footage from a different time. We don't know for sure. We know it's well documented, and we know that the people that made the movie, those who starred in it, those who produced it and wrote it, were real people. But of course, we always know that history is questionable, even as early as the 1980s, with some of the things that we've looked at, such as the Chronicle of Georgia and amazing buildings that were built in certain environments. So it's hard to say. I encourage you to make your own judgments, and I'll give you my conclusions in a moment. So what conclusions and theories do we have about Metropolis? There's a couple points I'd like to go over. First and foremost, the visuals and the eyes. There are incredible visuals of remarkable buildings, and there are also incredible visuals of people. These represent a different society, a different civilization. Now, whether this is merely a science fiction concept or this was actual footage representing something, it remains to be seen. The Tower of Babel. Referring to the Tower of Babel is interesting because the old biblical story tells us that language was confused and the Tower of Babel was a very abrupt and hubris attempt by human beings to reach the heavens. But I think it always represented the pinnacle of civilization, because if you think about it, the Tower of Babel represents the fall of civilization and could refer to one of the great resets, which if you look at my theories of Tartaria and the old world, I believe there have been several resets, and many other researchers believe that as well. It refers to the underground. People being moved underground is a recurring theory that we see in the old world and Tartarian theories, and you also see it in many other societies, and even Native American tradition says that people went underground. Sometimes terrible things happened to them, other times it was to escape issues, but it is a recurring theme. Children being separated. Well, we also have the orphan trains and other aspects of how children were separated. We also have the reports of child labor from the 19th century. That's in this film. We have an actual flood and a reset. So they show the underground city being flooded when the workers sabotage the machines. Floods are always associated with resets. The Great Flood. So again, another reference to Tartaria and the old world. Loss of humanity. People who are losing their humanity, whether they're becoming robots or they're acting like robots, or, as the film very much hits on the nose, building a robot and transferring the essence of a human being to that robot. Many different meanings, and that's also a theme that we see repeated in Tartaria and the old world. Control of perceptions in time, going back to the time paradox video on this channel, but also in other aspects. You can see what it means. Trinity, balance, and hope. We see that the actual solution to the plot issues revolve people working together, talking, seeing past their differences, and the imagery does support that. There's always that concept of Trinity, and it comes up in many different aspects of society, religion, something that goes beyond the duality that we seem so obsessed with. Finally, this could be something from another time or place. The imagery and the aspects of the film are just remarkable. There are clues in this film that this is our story, not history. I believe that what's depicted in this film is important and it does matter. It's important to ensuring that you remain your own person, because there's a saying, it's better to be your own person than a fool in someone else's reality. Thank you for joining me. Ask questions, explore your existence. You'll restore the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe.